Chapter 261, The Holy Spirit Cult and the Spirit Beast Army. Everyone's eyes swung toward the source of the sound. At the center of the maelstrom, beneath the shadows of thunderous beasts, a tall, slender figure slowly emerged. He seemed to walk through the air, each step descending an invisible stair. His black trench coat billowed like raven wings in the wind. The emblem on his cufflink flashed coldly in the dark. The long, cross-shaped sword in his hand shed a faint, icy light that radiated terrible power. Halosa, King of Hell, had arrived. The Ghost Emperor's features grew fierce. Standing not far from Halosa, he sneered, "I don't know what got into you, Halosa, betraying the Lord Demon Emperor, but if you're on the same side against Shrek Academy, I won't complain." Evil spirit masters of the Holy Spirit cult poured out from the north, while the Spirit Beast army surged from the east, forming a pincer. They glared like righteous avengers at those who had once hunted them. Halosa's presence immediately froze the battlefield's atmosphere. His cross-shaped sword reflected an eerie purple under the moon, an ancient, murderous resentment born of reaping millions of lives. Long Yewe's expression changed drastically. As a veteran who had faced the King of Hell, she knew better than anyone how terrifying he was. "Break that infernal formation," someone ordered. Halosa's sword tip traced a perfect arc directly at Yunming. Yunming's pupils constricted. As Sea God Pavilion Master, he understood exactly what the moment meant. The Qingqian Divine Spear erupted with unprecedented radiance. "All teachers and students, fall back to the inner courtyard. Activate the Academy's final defense." Guyue looked over the battlefield and smiled coldly. "Unless you merge with me," she declared, "Shrek Academy will be utterly destroyed today." "Kill!" Boom. A blinding silver light roared across heaven and earth like a pouring galaxy. The space between Guyue and Nair split inch by inch, forming countless mirror-like cracks. Each shard reflected two similar but different faces, one the cold, resolute Silver Dragon King, the other a sorrowful young girl. "Do you see? This is the truth." Guyue's voice rode the spatial vibrations. "She was always just a part of me." Before the sentence finished, the mirrors in the sky exploded all at once. Thousands of silver motes rained down like a storm, then eerily froze just short of the ground. Guyue's absolute command over space forced them to hover. She raised a hand and all the motes flowed back into Nair, violently accelerating the clone's reintegration. Nair arched backward with a cry. Her silver hair shot out to her ankles, the tips beginning to gleam metallic. Silver light leaked from her eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and her body drifted toward Guyue. Worse, fragments of memories not originally hers spilled from the shattered mirrors. Training at Sea God Lake, late-night chats in the work-study dorm, whispered words backstage after the class promotion competition. "No, don't!" Nair clawed at the fragments, but her fingers were turning translucent. Her private memories were being siphoned off, bound to Guyue like two books being forcibly stitched together. On the ground, Tang Wulin roared in agony. The Golden Dragon King's seal inside him felt the Silver Dragon King's summons. A chain inside the seal snapped with a kacha. Brilliant golden light burst from his pores and condensed into a miniature tornado above his head. Wulin, Shishe, and the others tried to hold him back, but the surge of energy threw them aside. Golden dragon scales flared across Tang Wulin's skin, his eyes narrowing to vertical slits. He shot into the sky without hesitation, but a black lightning bolt struck mid-flight. Ditian's dragon breath hit him squarely in the chest and slammed him into the broken remains of the city wall. "Ants should stay in the dust," Ditian said, shaking the residual black lightning from his hand. He turned toward Cao Deji, whose expression had gone pale. Next, before he could finish, a blinding white light cut across the heavens. Hundreds of Federal Central Legion aerial combat craft tore through the clouds, locking on to the foes above. On the ground, countless Spirit Master regiments had already deployed. Their linked spirit tools formed a dazzling sea of lights. Full domain spatial anchoring complete. Level 8 fixed position spirit tool cannon shells ready. Shrek's distress signal received. Spirit transfer pagoda indicates. The channel went dead. Electronic screens across the battlefield hissed into static, then all settled on the same image. Chen Zhou, seated on the top floor of the Jisho Chamber of Commerce, fingers drumming the armrest. "Good evening, everyone," his spirit wave voice broadcast across the field. I'll be brief. The Federation will not interfere today. Any objections? Inhibitors fell from the sky, their fields instantly suppressing the Central Legion's spirit power and neutralizing nearby spirit tools. The pre-programmed irreversible energy field smothered the roar of the fleet. Is the Ji-Shou Chamber of Commerce about to betray the Empire entirely? Yu Guanji of the Central Legion barked. Chen Zhou smiled without warmth and replied lightly. Yu Guanji opened his mouth, but an invisible pressure pinned him silent, as if an invisible mountain pressed on his chest. He swallowed his words. He knew too well that if the Ji-Shou Chamber struck now, combined with the East Sea Legion's current strength, the Federation's main forces would be crippled, and the Star Luo and Douling empires would certainly go all in. A dark shadow rolled over the city. Countless monstrous beasts surged among the clouds. The spirit tool array's lights flickered like candles in a storm. The entire outer city of Shrek had become a battlefield. Fragments of metal and ripped architecture hung and spun in turbulent energy eddies, forming a grotesque, frozen tableau. Guyue's fingers closed fully on Nair's chest. Silver threads burst from the contact point, writhing like living things and binding the struggling girl. Nair began to dematerialize, like a watercolor wash fading into Guyue's silhouette. Star-like motes flowed through the silver filaments. These were the core memories and feelings that made up Nair. Is this everything you cherish? Guyu asked, a bitter curl at the corner of her mouth as she drank the flood of memories. In the racing stream of images, Tang Wulin's back appeared again and again, on the East Sea training ground, beside a bonfire in the Star Do Great Forest, beneath the moon over Sea God Lake. Each frame carried a warmth Guyu had never felt. Stop! A roar split the air. Tang Wulin, bloodied, burst through the rubble. Golden dragon scales covered most of his body. Some deep instinct in the golden dragon bloodline answered the call. The light from his heart coalesced into a solid golden claw and lunged to tear at the silver threads that bound Nair. A flicker of surprise crossed Guyue's face. She hadn't expected the human youth to recover so quickly under Detian's assault. What surprised her even more was that those golden claws could actually disturb the Silver Dragon King's fundamental power, if only barely, but enough to interrupt the fusion. I underestimated the Golden Dragon King's legacy, she murmured. Guyue formed a hand seal. A silver moon radiance condensed into a twisted spatial vortex in her palm. It's a pity you haven't even fully broken the seal. What makes you think you can oppose me? She said. Just as she prepared to strike the killing blow, Nair's eyes flew open. Her body was already dissolving, but it erupted with astonishing power. With her last strength, she shoved Tang Wulin away. Run! She'll really kill you! Nair gasped. Guyue's expression turned hard at once. Tang Wulin stumbled backward from the shove, his golden pupils narrowing. He watched in helpless horror as Nair's form dissolved inch by inch in the silver light, drifting toward Guyu like grains of sand. Memories, emotions, the very personality that had been Nair were being devoured and fused into Guyu at a visible rate. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew that if he didn't act, Nair would be gone forever. Let her go, Tang Wulin roared. The Golden Dragon King's seal inside him loosened with his shout, releasing a surge of draconic power. Golden scales erupted across half his body, bony spines jutted from his back, and the faint outline of wings flared behind him. Guyue regarded him with cold disdain. An ant trying to shake a tree, she said. A silver chain shot from the void at her thought, wrapping tightly around Tang Wulin's neck. A suffocating pressure rose like a tide. The golden scales sprouted frantically, but the chain felt otherworldly, woven from a higher dimensional force even the Golden Dragon King couldn't break. His vision blurred. Voices, his friends' shouts, faded around him, but still he pushed forward toward Guyue. A dark shadow flicked across the sky. Guyue formed a spatial barrier with her other hand and slammed Tang Wulin away. He tore through 3 training halls before finally coming to a stop. Blood spewed from his mouth. The newly formed dragon scales began to crack. Pain shot through his meridians like 1,000 silver needles. Guyue, Nair, come back, he mumbled, the silver-white world before his eyes swimming in crimson. The moonlight's pressure ate at his consciousness, and he finally blacked out. Night hardened into silence. The eye of the storm above Shrek Academy turned slowly, the shattered city lay like a torn painting. Nair's body had become nearly transparent, threads of silver like spiderwebs winding her up and pulling what belonged to her into Guyue. The last inch of distance remained. Guyue's fingertips traced Nair's fading outline, and a faint, almost tender smile touched her lips. She could feel the vibrant memories stored in the clone, the steamed buns Tang Wulin had handed her, the sweat of morning drills, the high fives after promotion matches. Each scene blazed with a warmth that made her feel strangely sick. This emotional data should have been discarded, but a mechanism deep in the Silver Dragon King's bloodline had been archiving it automatically. How ironic, Guyue muttered. I didn't know a few drops of human tears could cloud a mind. She shuddered. The memories fused into her and burned through her spiritual world like wildfire. For a moment, she even saw Tang Wulin covered in blood and felt her heart wrench, a reaction that should not belong to the Silver Dragon King. My lord? Ditian sensed the disturbance and shook the badly wounded Yun Ming from his back. His dragon wings stirred a hurricane as he swept toward Guyue. But as he reached her, the silver-haired girl's eyes opened. Oddly, they were half silver, half purple. Get lost, she snapped. She waved a hand, and a spatial rift hurled Ditian back 1,000 meters. Guyue clutched her temples. The human emotions that the dragon should have crushed were now frantically reorganizing within her mind. When Nair had dissolved to nothing but a head, Guyue showed a relieved, almost human smile. You were swayed after all, weren't you? The clone's voice said. Shut up! Guyue forced the last flicker of consciousness under. But as Nair's remnants fully returned, countless memory fragments crashed through her spiritual world. The candy box hidden in the dorm's work-study room, sharing an umbrella in a downpour, counting meteors side by side on the academy roof after night training. Ugh! Guyue doubled over, clutching her head. The Silver Dragon King's fundamental power lost control and coalesced into millions of light blades that lashed out blindly. Even Ditian, caught closest, was struck, a deep, bloody wound opening as black-purple dragon blood spattered like a waterfall. A complete Silver Dragon King, even not at full strength, was a deity walking existence. A silver storm swept across Shrek City. Guyue's body rose into the sky like a fallen moon, light pouring from her like an eruption. Her hair had gone pure silver white, streaming behind her in the energy storm like comet tails. Her eyes were cold, profound dragon purple. Her fingers brushed her chest, where a human heart had once beat. The Silver Dragon King's power had finally consumed the last traces of Nair's emotions. Perhaps now she could be called the Silver Dragon King, Guyue. Finally, returned, she whispered, and a dragon's roar rolled through the shattered heavens. The students of Shrek Academy below barely kept their footing under that pressure, fear spreading through them. They had watched Nair dissolve with their own eyes and had been powerless. Yun Ming, propped on the Qingqian Divine Spear, stared up at Guyue with a grief that cut deep. She had been his foremost disciple, like a daughter. Is there truly no turning back? He wondered. The silver storm braided with the night. The sky seemed to bow under its force. Guyue floated above it all, wrapped in the pure fundamental power of the Silver Dragon King, showing only those cold, disdainful dragon eyes. She flicked her fingers, and a silver arc of light pushed Ditian back again. At this moment, she needed no bodyguards. Every emotional bond was severed. Human emotions, she said, her silver glowing palm reflecting the ruined city below. Such a burden. At the storm's center, the torn debris and chaotic spirit fluctuations were held in eerie stillness. That was the Silver Dragon King's dominion over space. Every speck of dust and fragment hung frozen in the silver domain. Even sound was swallowed. Only a faint metallic clink broke the silence. Tang Wulin's right hand was driven into the ground. Dazzling golden blood seeped between his fingers, scorching the earth like molten metal. With the Golden Dragon King's seal ripped open further than ever before, his mind was consumed by a single obsession. Nair's last smile. Chapter 263. How dare the thieves of the Tang clan call themselves gods? I should be able to hold on for another 30 seconds. Chen Zhou's voice slid into Halosa's mind through an encrypted channel. He stood before the observation window on the top floor of the Jishou Chamber of Commerce, the ice crystals at his fingertips reflecting every detail of the battlefield. the golden pattern spreading beneath Tang Wulin's skin, the energy overflowing from the sealed cracks that made his monitoring equipment hum like an alarm. If this drags on, the Federation's limit Douluo will arrive sooner than expected. Halosa's sword cut horizontally, splitting Long Yewei's holy light dragon phantom in two. Are you sure you want to let this farce continue? Chen Zhou let out a low chuckle. At the center of the silver storm, Guyuena's body shuddered. The memory fragments forced into her, belonging to Nair, had stirred a tsunami in her spiritual world. The young man's image reformed, Tang Wulin blocking a spirit ability for her during the promotion competition, the trembling grilled fish he handed her at the Sea God Lake blind date, his drenched but fiercely protective back in the storm. Each scene seared a void in her mind. No! Guyuena's dragon eyes narrowed violently. Her silver hair rose like furious serpents. She condensed an energy ball capable of tearing space in her palm, but it froze before it could strike. The sight before her stopped it. Tang Wulin, covered in blood, was tearing open the domain's barrier with his bare hands. His whole body had completed a brutal dragonization. Jagged golden bone spurs ripped through his muscles. 8 of the 18 seals on his heart had dissolved, and the boiling golden dragon king blood coursing through him made every inch of his skin radiate unbearable heat. Give it back to me. Tang Wulin's voice was rough, almost inhuman, and his eyes burned with an obsession fiercer than dragon wrath. Give Nair back to me. The moment his golden claws met the silver domain, time itself seemed to pause. Two supreme powers, both rooted in the dragon god, collided in the physical world. The aftershocks silently obliterated buildings within 1,000 meters. The nearest evil spirit masters vaporized without a sound. Detian's black dragon avatar was forced to manifest, only to have huge sections of its scales peel away. Kaudeji's ruthless sword shattered into dust, leaving just the hilt clutched in his bloodied hand. At the eye of the storm, Guyuena's fingertip pressed to Tang Wulin's brow. Her silver hair tangled with his black strands in the maelstrom of energy, and in the frozen instant their pupils reflected one another. She saw shattered stars in his eyes. He saw a melting silver moon in hers. With a shattering crack, the 9th golden dragon king chain sealing Tang Wulin snapped free. The farce is completely over, Chen Zhou said softly. A giant hammer descended from the sky. The weakened golden ancient tree on Sea God Island flared with life-giving light. Sensing Tang Wulin's life in immediate danger, 2 god-level powers within Shrek Academy awoke. The Golden Dragon King bloodline was not something that could be safely unsealed. Its raw, tyrannical power came straight from the dragon god. Without elevating the body to contain it, unsealing the bloodline kills the host. Tang Hao, Yin, I've been waiting for you for a long time. You hiding rats. Despite being at the continent's center, the sound of waves both distant and near crashed over everyone like a living thing. The mountain-sized hammer was intercepted by a short halberd. The rescuing green light was pushed aside by surging layers of water. Yunming, who again blocked Halosa's strike in the sky, saw the scene and narrowed his eyes. Hai Wuliang. When Hai Wuliang appeared, the whole sky changed color. Above Shrek City, which had been swathed in darkness, endless phantoms of ocean tides roared up like the breath of an ancient beast, making every ear ache. His gilded long hair fluttered. The short halberd in his hand effortlessly neutralized the clear sky avatar's bombardment. Water like ripples of light flowed over his dark blue battle robe, and with each step he took, it felt as if tens of thousands of tons of seawater boiled beneath his feet. Even if you burn all of Yin's essence blood today, you're not taking this boy. Hai Wuliang's voice wasn't loud, but it made Tang Hao's face go pale. Yin appeared before the golden tree. This blue-silver emperor now bore blood-red patterns flickering on her brow, a clear sign of fury. But when she tried to mobilize her life energy, she found the area sealed by 7 towering sea pillar phantoms. Chen Zhou had expected it. The moment Gu Yu and Nair clashed, Tang Wulin would rush in without regard for his own safety. Tang Wulin could only do that because he was driven by love, but he was only Spirit King level. Yin, trapped by the backlash inside the golden ancient tree, would call for Tang Hao, and the 2 hidden elders would act to save their grandson and protect their son. If that was inevitable, then let those 2 thieves give back what rightfully belonged to this planet. Who are you? Tang Hao's figure materialized, hair unkempt. To break the World Core's seal on Yin, he had risked everything to help the planet absorb chaotic spiritual power from beyond their world, replenishing the plane so the core would stop feeding on Yin's life. Now, faced with a dying grandson, Tang Hao and Yin had no choice but to intervene by force. Tang Hao's clear sky avatar stationed itself between heaven and earth. The colossal hammer shadow churned wind and cloud. The ruins of Shrek City trembled beneath a single strike. Yin's form was as light as an elf, emerald life energy swirling around her, but it was firmly bound by the 7 towering sea pillars, every surge of life being devoured. Hai Wuliang. Tang Hao's deep voice rolled like thunder. Do you understand the consequences of obstructing this god? Hai Wuliang only chuckled and tilted his halberd. Dark blue ripples spread outward, and as if laughing at Tang Hao, returned his released divine force in full. How dare the thieves of the Tang clan call themselves gods? The phantom waves behind him hardened into a coiling giant dragon, its eyes as deep and merciless as the ocean. Boom! When the 2 divine forces met, space cracked like fragile glass, a web of black fissures tearing the sky. Students and teachers, lucky enough to survive in Shrek City, shrank back in horror. Under such overwhelming pressure, their spirits could not even be released. It was a natural suppression, a gulf of levels too great to overcome. Tang Wulin's body began to dissolve in the energy storm. The Golden Dragon King's destructive force was backlashing on its host. His skin disintegrated before everyone's eyes. He was turning into a bloody mist. Just as it seemed he would be erased, a beam of silver light wrapped around him. Group number 3005274 Avon. First 3 chapters, 2 more updates tonight. Chapter 264. What does Gu Yuena have to do with what she said? Gu Yuena suddenly appeared before him. Her silver-white hair streamed straight back in the flow of energy, and a dragon claw pierced the rampaging Golden Dragon King seal in Tang Wulin's chest, drawing on the power of the Silver Dragon King to forcibly stabilize his collapsing dragon core. My lord, Detian roared in horror, humans are not worth your risk. That is the Golden Dragon King's source rampaging. A full Silver Dragon King phantom rose behind Gu Yuena, its wings spread hundreds of meters wide. Her amethyst dragon pupils swept coldly across the battlefield. Everyone fell silent, as if their throats had been clamped. Her fingertips glowed with silver light as she began to suppress the rampaging Golden Dragon King power within Tang Wulin. His body, on the verge of disintegration, gradually steadied in the silver glow. The monstrous bone spurs and dragon scales withdrew back into his flesh. His unfocused eyes reflected Gu Yuena's cold profile, and his lips quivered as if to speak. Bang! The Silver Dragon King's palm struck him unconscious. Gu Yuena held Tang Wulin by the collar and floated in midair, looking over to where Tang Hao and the others were being held back by Hai Wuliang, and let out a self-mocking chuckle. It seems I've always been the clown they've been playing with. She tossed Tang Wulin toward BG, who sprang to catch the hot, heavy body with her emerald wings. Use your healing domain to keep him alive, Gu Yuena ordered. Don't let the Golden Dragon King power run loose again. A frown crossed her face. Her silver nails bit into her palm. Memories from her clone surged through her mind, and Tang Wulin's desperate, dying obsession dragged at the Dragon Clan while she had kept steady for 10,000 years. Gu Yuena clenched her hand until her nails drew blood. Silver drops tracked down her fingers. Nayer's memories churned in her head. Those vivid, warm fragments stabbed at her icy heart again and again. Is this what you want? She murmured, pain flashing in those purple dragon pupils. These cheap human emotions. My lord. Detian transformed into his human form and landed beside her, eyes full of worry. Your emotional fluctuations are too severe. Perhaps we should withdraw. Gu Yuena shook her head and looked up at Tang Hao, held at bay in the distance by Hai Wuliang. The confusion in her gaze dissolved, replaced by cold resolve. Tang Sect, Shrek Academy, Spirit Transfer Pagoda, humans have stood united for too long. Today we will break that alliance. The entire city of Shrek trembled, cracks spidered across the ground, and dense spatial power welled up from deep below. Gu Yuena raised both hands, and a silver vortex spun in her palms, expanding outward and connecting to the remotest depths of the Star Dew Great Forest. Her voice cut across the battlefield like an ancient bell. "Heed my command. Spirit beasts, attack!" A tide of beasts poured into the inner city. Countless powerful spirit beasts smashed past the spirit tool defenses. Even the Steel City's barrier, famed for holding back 100,000-year beasts, began to stagger. DTN let out a thunderous dragon roar, and the space around him convulsed. He grew, revealing his true form as the golden-eyed Black Dragon King. Dark scales cloaked his body, golden pupils blazed like suns, and his wings unfurled to block the sky. His roar summoned responses from the Stardew Great Forest. BG beat her emerald wings, and a healing current radiated through the beast ranks. The myriad Demon King twisted the earth so plants surged and entangled the city. Xiangjun, a hulking living mountain, bellowed and charged for the inner wards. Shrek City became a battlefield. The roars of spirit masters, the bellows of spirit beasts, and the sound of collapsing structures braided together as the shadow of death fell over the once prosperous city. The inner court's defense line began to fail. Damn it! Qiangu Dongfeng slammed his rod down, crushing a 10,000-year spirit beast into pulp. With the backing of the Spirit Transfer Pagoda, the number of human limit Douluo rose to 7 at once. Dozens of super Douluo, more than 100 titled Douluo. Most of the Douluo Plane's top forces were gathered here. They forced the beast tide and the evil spirit masters back. Guyo said it was her business. What does that have to do with me, Guyuena? Qiangu Dongfeng snapped. Guyuena regarded the furious man with cool indifference. Her form streaked upward like a silver meteor, and she hovered 10,000 meters above the city. Her outstretched dragon wings shone like two giant mirrors, scattering the fractured light and shadows below. This was the first time she had fully liberated her power as the complete Silver Dragon King. Each scale glowed with starry silver from within, and branch structures sprouted from her horns like two small silver world trees. When she exhaled, the air within 100 meters condensed into tiny spatial crystals that shattered and scattered into motes of light. Qiangu Dongfeng, a demigod-level powerhouse, stared up solemnly. He could feel the energy level flowing from Guyuena. She had surpassed the limits of the human spirit master system. The 7-limit Douluo rose together. Yunming with his Qingqian divine spear, Long Yewe with the light dark holy dragon, Zhang Xin and Cao Deji sharing the ruthless lover sword, Qiangu Dongfeng with his coiling dragon rod, Chen Xinji in his sea god suit, and Yu Guanji in his god of war armor. The pinnacle of human combat power pointed at the same target. Guyuena's lips twitched. She lifted a single hand. Crack! The 7-limit Douluo froze. The space around them had become a giant transparent amber, and even spirit power stopped flowing. Long Yewe's light dark holy dragon phantom collapsed mid-unfurl, as if a crystal statue had been paused in motion. The spirit masters on the ground gaped at the impossible sight, 7 towering human powerhouses, pinned in midair like specimens by the Silver Dragon King. Guyuena's fingertips trembled as 7 silver halos slid out from her palm and latched precisely around the necks of the limit Douluo. The rings began to tighten. Yunming's face flushed, veins standing out. Long Yewe's light dark wings crumpled as if singed. Cao Deji's ruthless sword began to crumble from the tip. At that moment, boom! 7 hammer shadows struck the silver rings at once, and chains of living energy wrapped around the waists of the suspended Douluo. Space shuddered. "You dare be distracted while fighting me?" A voice cut through the sky. "Arrogant!" Another voice snapped back. A tide of silver-gray energy exploded between the two sides. The collision of Hai Wuliang's twin halberds and Tang Hao's clear sky divine hammer shredded the thick dark clouds above Shrek City. Moonlight broke through in sheets, pouring down like a silver waterfall and illuminating the scarred streets below. Chapter 265. At the moment of retreat, launch a full-force assault on the evil spirit masters. Guyuena's silver hair whipped wildly in the energy storm as she watched Tang Hao rush to rescue the 7-limit Douluo. Her voice was soft but carried across the battlefield like a bell. "Retreat! I will return Tang Wulin to you." The words hit like a stone, dropped into a still lake, sending ripples through everyone. Tang Hao and Yin exchanged a look. Both saw the same hesitation in the other's eyes. Of course they wanted to save their grandson, but if Guyuena truly was offering a trade— "My lord?" DTN's dragon eyes narrowed in incredulity. He shifted into human form and landed beside Guyuena, kneeling on one knee. Humans are cunning. If we let the tiger return to the mountain, are you questioning my decision? Guyuena's purple dragon eyes cut him off. A small crystalline silver orb formed on her fingertip. Its surface shimmered with countless tiny spatial fissures that smarted the eyes to look at. Ditian immediately lowered his head, cold sweat beating at his temples. The energy in that orb could obliterate even a fierce beast. I wouldn't dare. On the battlefield, Tang Hao clenched his fists. Yin's blue-silver emperor vines coiled quietly around his arm. Green motes of light flowed from her palm and settled over the rescued limit Douluo. Yunming was the first to move. Clutching the Qingqian divine spear across his chest, he glared at the silver dragon king high above. Outrageous, he muttered. Guyuena lifted her chin and her gaze pierced the chaos, fixing on a shadowed figure behind Hai Wuliang far off. A pair of crawling insects, lurking outside this world, pretending to command humans. At that moment, Tang Wulin's fingers, held by BG, trembled. It was a faint motion, but Guyuena noticed it and allowed herself a flicker of interest. The golden dragon scales on Tang Wulin's forehead had dimmed. The seal had at least stabilized. Tang Hao's fury snapped. His clear sky hammer flared with dazzling gold light and 11 spirit rings burned alive. He was about to strike when Yin gripped his sleeve. "Brother Hao, calm down." Yin's eyes never left the still figure of Tang Wulin. She understood the situation. Guyuena held absolute control now. The silver-haired girl hovering in midair had fully become the Silver Dragon King. None of them had recovered fully. If they kept fighting in this state, it would only end in disaster. Tang Hao and Yin, as the lords of the plane and the world's life cores, could not risk draining their energies here. If they failed, Yin might be exhausted entirely. "Time's up," Guyuena declared calmly. Silence fell. Wherever her silver gaze passed, spirit masters trembled. Even Tang Hao's raised hammer stopped mid-swing. This god-ranked powerhouse was cowed by the look of the young girl suspending herself in the sky. "You," he began through clenched teeth, chest heaving. Yin squeezed his hand and whispered, "We can't drag this out." She glanced at Tang Wulin. BG's healing emerald light wrapped him, but his life flame was faint. Guyuena seemed tired of their hesitation. With a single motion, a ray of silver light flashed from her finger and enveloped Tang Wulin, nudging him toward the golden ancient tree. "My lord!" Ditian moved to block, but Guyuena cut him off. "Silence!" Silver light spun around her. Spatial laws danced between her 5 fingers. "All spirit beasts, retreat from Shrek City." Ditian blinked, confused. "But we, Ditian." Her purple dragon pupils held him in place. "I do not need subordinates who question my will." Yet the beasts heard another voice, not spoken aloud, but planted in their minds by Guyuena. At the moment of retreat, launch a full-force assault on the evil spirit masters. Shock flashed across Ditian's face, an expression everyone saw and read only as astonishment at Guyuena's order. His black dragon true body dropped down to the ruined walls. Rubble hung suspended, held in the strange calm of the Silver Moon domain. As the spirit beast who knew the Silver Dragon King best, Ditian sensed a deeper meaning. This grand siege may never have been intended to destroy Shrek at all. "All units, retreat." Ditian's dragon roar, laced with psychic ripples, rolled over the battlefield. BG's emerald wings swept across the lines, her healing light soothing the agitated beasts. The plant waves controlled by the myriad Demon King receded, exposing soul cannon turrets crushed by vines. Xiangjun pounded his scarred chest and dragged himself toward the spatial rift. Guidi's pale mask cracked open with fury. "Halosa!" His voice was raw with betrayal. "You said the Silver Dragon King would cooperate with us to annihilate." Whoosh! The Silver Moon domain contracted. A tide of retreating spirit beasts poured away from the ruins, and ancient spatial passages opened toward the starred Great Forest. Just as the Holy Spirit cult members realized they had been betrayed, the true intent of the Silver Moon domain revealed itself. Boom! 12 silver pillars of light descended from the sky, striking the most densely packed positions of the evil spirit masters. Dragon language runes flared along each pillar, evil slaying formations Guyuena had carved into the spatial interlayer beforehand. Those caught in the light watched in terror as their painstakingly honed vengeful spirits were purified, then dissolved. Even their own spirits began to disintegrate. Gidi melted into black mist and tried to flee, but Halosa's cross-shaped sword pinned him in the center of the pillar. Pale skeletal hands clawed from under the trench coat of the Nether King Douluo, rending the black mist back into a human shape. The last time you used human skin lanterns to torment children, Halosa's blade burned with purple flame. I wanted to do this. Guidi's screams cut off abruptly. The silver light devoured his decaying body. The dragon runes crushed even his soul remnants. When the 12 pillars retracted at once, thousands of evil spirit masters vanished like snow under sunlight. Only a handful of titled Douluo elders burned their life essence to escape. All of this unfolded while Guyuena hovered 1,000 meters high, her silver hair like moonlight, her face expressionless as if the slaughter beneath her mattered not at all. Only when a certain golden-red figure broke through BG's emerald barrier did her fingertip tremble almost imperceptibly. Tang Wulin had woken. He staggered forward, wrapped in BG's healing light, his left arm now strangely overlaid in golden dragon king scales. He lurched toward the silver light, but Ah Yin intercepted him, dragging him back to where Tang Hao and the others huddled. Around them, the fully recovered members of Shrek Academy, the Tang sect, and the Spirit Transfer Pagoda glared across the field. They couldn't fathom why the Spirit Beast army had suddenly attacked the Holy Spirit cult, but after suffering heavy casualties, they all considered whether to turn their wrath on the Spirit Beasts. The battlefield lay in uneasy silence, a pause before the next storm. Chapter 266, Thunder, Crescent Moon Slash. Not far away, beams of light cut through the air. Chen Shinji, Guan Yu, and Yu Guanji, 3 Limit Douluo, arrived with more than a dozen Super Douluo from the federal headquarters as reinforcements. Standing between them and the battle were only Hai Wuliang and Gu Yuena. A whale-like hum rolled across the void. The silver moon domain unfurled, distorting the sky, and millions of rhomboid fragments of light blossomed behind Gu Yuena, a clear manifestation of spatial law. The newly arrived federal forces slammed on the brakes in unison. Several mech pilots in the vanguard were hurled through 3 ruined buildings by inertia. Guan Yue's battle saber screamed in its sheath. The commander in charge realized with a chill that his level 99 quasi-divine spirit power was being suppressed and could not circulate. Even Chen Shinji's sea god attire dimmed. The war god hall master stared at Hai Wuliang with a look that left no room for doubt. Did you see that clearly? Yu Guanji's face was grave, and his telepathic alarm swept through the minds of the others. That is true divine pressure. Tang Hao, hovering near the golden tree, groaned. Ah Yin hurriedly bound his wounded arm. Emerald light seeped into the dark, writhing injuries beneath his skin, clear signs of erosion by Hai Wuliang's divine force. For the first time, Tang Hao realized the golden-haired man before him was far from an ordinary divine being. Hai Wuliang curled his lip and idly twirled the short trident in his hand. 7 limits, 34 supers, and a few scattered others, he said, scanning the assembled human force. Do you really think this lineup? The silver moon above him split and reformed, shedding a stardust rain. The pinpricks of light touched the ground and illuminated in perfect synchronization the soul fluctuations of every enemy target, Gu Yuena's marking technique. Hai Wuliang finished smoothly. Is enough to buy me a few minutes to kill? Without warning, his figure flickered and appeared in the center of the federal camp. In a heartbeat, he had crossed 1,000 meters, his short trident slashed horizontally toward Yu Guanji's throat. The war god armor's protective shield shattered like paper, the 4-character battle armor dissolved like water. Yu Guanji seemed on the verge of being decapitated. Boom! A hammer shadow crashed down, the clear sky hammer. The impact between Hai Wuliang's trident and the hammer detonated a deafening explosion that pulverized rubble for 1,000 meters in every direction. The shockwave flung Yu Guanji hundreds of meters. He landed bleeding from every orifice of his head and body. The aftershock alone almost cost him his life. Tang Hao stood there in a sweep of golden light, his bare torso a tapestry of ugly scars from forcing across spatial boundaries. Muscles bulged. The clear sky hammer was entwined with blue-silver emperor vines. Black-red lightning leapt from the point where hammer met trident. Are you so eager to die? Tang Hao challenged. Hai Wuliang's golden eyes narrowed with displeasure. Tang Hao's tiger's mouth split open, and a drop of divine blood fell onto the tip of Hai Wuliang's broken trident. The drop bloomed with golden ripples as soon as it touched metal, ripples that resonated through the spirits of all human spirit masters. Hai Wuliang's pupils constricted. "This is not your power," he muttered, and tried to wrench free. Before he could finish, 12 silver moonlight wheels converged from every direction. Gu Yuena's dragon claw phantom tore through space, aiming for Tang Hao's back, but golden tree roots materialized and blocked it just before it struck. Chain-like roots coiled around the dragon's wrist. A life imprint glowed between Ah Yin's brows, and the golden ancient tree manifested a towering phantom in broad daylight. Tang Wulin's unconscious figure appeared on the thick trunk. Patterns of the sea god trident flickered across the bark. "Want to touch my husband?" Ah Yin's hair glittered, turning into crystalline strands of the blue-silver emperor spirit. "You'll have to get past me first." The sudden intervention shifted the battlefield in an instant. The blue-silver emperor patterns on Tang Hao's hammer flared and forced Hai Wuliang's trident back, however briefly. Gu Yuena's silver hair moved as if stirred by an invisible wind. She stared at Tang Wulin being wrapped in sap, and a dark light flickered in her purple, crystalline dragon eyes. Suppressed memory fragments writhed to life at the sight of the young man's pale lips. The silver dragon king's fingertips trembled. Yunming could not help but glance toward the spirit beast army, which pressed on the evil spirit masters. If the human limit Douluo could break through and unite with their beasts now, they could slaughter hundreds of thousands-year-old spirit beasts, harvest spirit bones, perhaps enough to artificially produce a few, even a dozen, super Douluo. Everyone present had already seen the wolfish ambition of the Jisho chamber. Whether because of Hai Wuliang's interference or the combined offensive of the Star Luo and Douling empires, the Federation had been thrown into unprecedented crisis. Eyes flicked among the leaders: Qiangu Diting, Qiangu Qingfeng, Qiangu Dongfeng of the Spirit Transfer Pagoda, Chen Xinjie, Guan Yue, Yu Guanzi of the Federation. They were all on the verge of taking action. A thunderclap split the sky. A pure white Guandao transformed into pure thunder and, bathed in moonlight, carved an arc like a crescent moon, slamming down across the ravaged battlefield. The Thunder Moon wheel struck with such force that black fissures tore space itself. Qiangu Diting's 4-character armor, coiling dragon protection, activated automatically, 9 dragon-patterned shields unfolding layer by layer. The defense, capable of withstanding a full-strength strike from a limit Douluo, shattered like fragile glass the instant the moon wheel hit. Blood sprayed a demonic purple under the moonlight. Qiangu Diting's left arm was severed at the shoulder. His coiling dragon rod spirit snapped in two. The old ancestor of the Spirit Transfer Pagoda watched his blood freeze into ice crystals in the moonlight, stunned. The white-clad figure stood proud amid the devastation. Thunder flashed along his guandao. A halo of bright moonlight flowed along the blade. To any who saw him, he was like a meteor tearing through dusk, instantly dominating the battlefield. Long Yewei's pupils narrowed as she looked up. Huoji, the public chairman of the Jisho Chamber of Commerce, a name known throughout the Douluo Plain. Everyone had assumed he possessed only quasi-divine strength. No one expected one slash from him would lop off the arm of a quasi-divine like Qiangu Diting. "Since you're all here today," Huoji intoned, and then, coldly, "then don't leave." Thunder rumbled within the clouds. His white robe snapped in the wind. Moonlight and thunder cascaded from the guandao and formed a strange resonant field. Every step Huoji took left gouged, gear-shaped patterns on the ground. "Thunder! Crescent Moon Slash!" As a city lord of the Thunder tribe among the machine race, Huoji had perfected the inherited ultimate technique, Thunder Crescent Moon Slash. Under this moon, his Crescent Moon Slash fused thunder and moonlight like a falling lunar arc. The blade light swept across the battlefield with terrifying, overwhelming force. Chapter 267, Ultimate Technique. Where the blade light passed, the hastily formed defensive lines of the Federal Allied Army collapsed as if they had never existed. Guan Yue's battle saber was ripped from his grasp, and his forward battle armor spiderwebbed with dozens of fractures. Chen Xinji's sea god suit was corroded by moonlight, his limbs chilled and stiff as if frozen solid. Yu Guanji was thrown into the ruins 1,000 meters away. The chest of his military god armor caved in. Boom! In the energy torrent braided with thunder and moonlight, the three limit Douluo of the Spirit Transfer Pagoda all coughed up blood and retreated. Qiangu Diding barely blocked with the broken shaft of his coiling dragon rod, yet 3 ribs were shattered by the thunderous backlash. Qiangu Qingfeng's purgatory halberd liquefied on the spot. The 7 soul spirits summoned by Qiangu Dongfeng were struck by lightning and became green smoke before they could even form completely. Huo Wuji did not press the attack after unleashing that strike. He sheathed his saber and stood watching the scattered allied forces, his white beard fluttering slightly in the wind. The Federation and the Spirit Transfer Pagoda have hunted spirit beasts together for 10,000 years. Today, we collect our debt. Any objections? Before anyone could reply, a deafening roar rolled in from afar. 4 divine-level auras erupted around the golden tree. Tang Hao's clear sky avatar swelled to 300 meters tall. The golden tree phantom spun behind him, and all 11 of his spirit rings detonated. Ah Yin's blue-silver emperor unfurled into a vast, sky-reaching web, every vine coursing with liquid world origin. Hai Wuliang split his twin halberds into 18 water dragons, each dragon's eye reflecting Guyuena's silver moon domain. Guyuena hovered at the heart of the silver moon, her hands shaping a dragon god seal that twisted the entire Shrek city like taffy. The space itself groaned under the clash of the 4 divine-level powers. Astonishingly, as their battle escalated, the ruins of Shrek City began to rise. This most prosperous city on the continent was being forcibly lifted from the earth by divine force. Boom! Countless shattered stones and structural scraps floated 100 meters into the air, then were pulverized by the colliding energies. Tang Wulin's body hung at the very center of the conflagration, cocooned in golden tree roots, the golden dragon king patterns beneath his skin flashing and fading. Huo Wuji's eyes narrowed. He and the others could see what Tang Hao and his wife intended. They were using their grandson's bloodline as a medium, as if to summon something. Hai Wuliang, finish this quickly, before things change. Huo Wuji barked. Understood. Hai Wuliang's arrogant smile vanished. His expression hardened, and the sound of his twin halberds became like waves smashing the shore. World-shaking, wave kill. The Mech tribe's ultimate technique, also a legacy ultimate, was unique. Only those who truly mastered a legacy ultimate could leap forward in combat realms. As clan leader of the Wave Clan and first city lord of Yuoshen Palace, Hai Wuliang had comprehended world-shaking wave kill to an unprecedented degree, shattering the Mech tribe's 18th level ceiling and reaching an unheard of 19th level. His gilded hair streamed without wind as the sky folded into an inverted azure sea. Hai Wuliang blurred among towering waves. The trajectories of his halberds tore at space itself. Chen Xinji's sea god suit trembled uncontrollably. The War God Hall master realized with horror that the sea power he inherited was being forcibly drawn away by an older law of water. This is not a spirit ability, Yunming said, the Qingtian divine spear driven into the ground to steady him. It's a manifestation of law. The azure domain of world-shaking wave kill already covered half of Shrek City. Water attribute spirit masters collapsed to their knees as if their spines had been wrenching out. Their spirits disintegrated into basic water elements with keening cries, merging into the inverted ocean above. Qiangu Dongfeng tried to cleave the domain barrier with his coiling dragon rod, but the rod's wind was shredded by thousands of rotating water blades. Whoosh! When the massive wave descended, time itself seemed to pause. Tang Hao's exploded 9th spirit ring suddenly congealed midair. Ah Yin's blue-silver emperor froze into a bizarre net. Only Tang Wulin, wrapped in the golden tree cocoon, shook violently. The golden dragon king blood that had seeped into the cocoon was being expelled by the purifying power of the waves. Don't even think about it, Tang Hao roared, eyes bloodshot. The Plane Master authority condensed in his palm, tearing a spatial rift across the sky. A torrent of power from the origin of Douluo Star poured down, but the instant it struck the wave domain, it blighted into an eerie purple-black. Hai Wuliang sneered and swung his left halberd at the sky. Tide! The inverted sea answered. Tens of thousands of tons of seawater surged against gravity, forming a 10-kilometer-wide vortex 10,000 feet above the ground. A water column plummeted from its center and struck the top of Tang Hao's head. The defensive shield built from plain power burst like a soap bubble. Bang! Tang Hao's legs sank into the earth. Ah Yin's blue-silver emperor expanded wildly to share the burden, but Gu Yuena's silver dragon-clawed hand pierced the spatial rift and precisely pinched the main vine of the blue-silver emperor. Her purple, crystal-like dragon eyes looked down coldly at the couple. I told you to retreat. As her 5 fingers tightened, the blue-silver emperor's vines snapped inch by inch. Ah Yin let out a wrenching scream. Tang Hao watched, veins throbbing as his wife's face prematurely aged, life energy forcibly siphoned through the vines into the Silver Dragon King. Stop! The golden tree shook with violence. Cracks spidered through the cocoon around Tang Wulin, and golden light seeped out like blood. Tang Wulin had awakened at some point. His right arm had fully dragonized, and his palm had pierced the cocoon, aiming at Gu Yuena's back. The Golden Dragon King's origin condensed into a spinning crimson orb in his palm. The surrounding air warped and shimmered from the heat. Hai Wuliang's eyes narrowed. This level of energy clearly surpassed Tang Wulin's current realm, unless forcing an unsealing? Huo Wuji guessed, blade turning toward the golden tree, seeking death. But Gu Yuena moved faster than any of them. Without turning, the silver-haired girl raised her left hand and the silver moon domain formed a mirror-like barrier behind her. The golden-red orb struck the barrier, and tens of thousands of dragon-language runes burst from the mirror, decomposing, absorbing, and transmuting the violent Golden Dragon King power. Ah! Ah! Tang Wulin's dragon scales curled backward, and his flesh tore in a spray of blood from the backlash. Gu Yuena finally looked at him. Her silver eyes glittered. Foolish! A sliver of silver light traced and severed the Golden Dragon King's seal node on Tang Wulin's right arm. He trembled. The golden scales retreated into his skin like a tide. Gu Yuena's motion in the air was smooth and practiced. The drawn energy condensed into a blood-red crystal in her palm, then was purified into a transparent gem by the silver dragon's power. My lord, watch out behind you! Detian's warning cut through the clash as a sound of air being torn. Seizing his grandson's moment of injury, Tang Hao unleashed his divine force. The clear sky hammer swelled to a mountain-shattering size, its head wrapped in law chains from the plane's core. If this blow landed, even the Silver Dragon King's body could be grievously wounded. Chapter 268, Playing God. Gu Yuena only needed a simple motion. She hurled the purified energy crystal at the clear sky hammer. Boom! A strange golden-white light erupted between heaven and earth. The shockwave from the clash of divine energies spread outward in a ring, and wherever it passed, even space itself fractured into a mosaic of cracks. The lower-ranked spirit masters watching the fight all lost sight of the details. Only those above Super Douluo could see the clear sky hammer's physical form disintegrating inside the energy storm. Brother Hao! Ah Yin ignored the bleeding of her own life essence and forced the blue-silver emperor to weave a protective net. But Hai Wuliang's second stage heaven-shocking wave kill arrived at that moment. Those suspended waves crystallized into millions of tiny prisms. Each prism refracted Gu Yuena's silver moon domain, concentrating the once diffuse spatial cutting force into tens of thousands of silver threads. The blue-silver emperor's network was easily severed by those threads. The embodiment of the seed of life coughed up pale, golden blood, staring in disbelief at the silver blade protruding from her chest. The spatial law had pierced her divine core. The golden tree gave a mournful cry. The ancient tree that had carried Shrek's millennia of destiny began to wither. Where its bark split, a golden-red sap flowed, the plain origin essence Tang Hao and Ah Yin had infused into it. Opportunity. Huo Wuji's crescent moonblade suddenly changed course. The blade light sliced through the chaotic turbulence of energy, aiming straight for Tang Wulin. Gu Yuena's silver hair drained of color in an instant, becoming a pure cascade of light that fell to her waist. Her hands overlapped at her chest as the dragon god seal spun and widened in her palms, dragging the entire battlefield into a strange slow motion. Huo Wuji's blade tip eerily froze 3 inches from Tang Wulin's throat, not blocked but held motionless in midair. Old Huo, something's happening, someone shouted. Retreat, Hai Wuliang yelled, and Huo Wuji understood. He drew his blade back to Hai Wuliang's side. At that moment, a blue-haired man emerged from Tang Wulin's forehead, swelling into a 100-meter Dharma idol that coldly stared at Gu Yuena, Hai Wuliang, and Huo Wuji. The trident in his hand radiated a vast oceanic aura. See God! Below, Chen Zhou felt the ancestral aura that had been passed down and remembered through generations. He looked up, stunned. This was not a mere spirit projection, but a true manifestation of origin bearing the god realm's presence. The golden trident mark on the blue-haired man's brow shone like the morning sun, and his gaze made the entire Silver Moon domain tremble violently. If Hai Wuliang hadn't waved his twin halberds to suppress the inverted sea's turbulence, the realm's power would have ground everything into ordinary mist. "Little San!" Tang Hao's shout trembled with disbelief. Kneeling on cracked earth, his clear sky hammer reduced to a shattered hilt, he stared at the figure. This was the founder of the Tang sect, the son of Tang Hao and Ai Yin, the sea god Tang San, who had ascended to the god realm 20,000 years ago. To be precise, it was a wisp of Tang San's separated soul. His main body had been swept away by the cosmic storm along with the god realm. This manifestation had appeared by borrowing power from Tang Wulin's abruptly unsealed Golden Dragon King bloodline. Presumptuously interfering with the order of the lower realm, Tang San's Dharma idol rumbled, his voice like thunder rolling through every corner of the battlefield. He tapped his trident lightly, and the spatial fractures caused by the divine collision immediately sealed. His gaze fell upon Huo Wuji's blood-stained crescent moon blade. When he saw the Thunder Gear emblem carved into the blade, his pupils narrowed almost imperceptibly. "You do not belong in this plane." Hai Wuliang and Huo Ji exchanged glances. Their inherited totems flared together, gilded waves and thunder gears interlocked in the void to form a peculiar energy circuit. It was a combined combat technique unique to their clan lineages. The Thunder Tribe and the Wave Clan had exceptional compatibility, and together they could unleash power few others could match. "As expected, you recognized us," Hai Wuliang sneered, crossing his short halberds before his chest. "Too bad your god realm was swept away by the space-time turbulence. How dare a wisp of a separated soul lecture us?" Thunder and water currents braided around them as a gigantic energy vortex shot into the sky, temporarily resisting Tang San's divine might. Gu Yuena narrowed her eyes. These two mysterious powerhouses clearly shared a common enemy with her. Tang San's phantom remained calm. This world does not belong to outsiders. The balance kept for millennia by the Tang sect, Shrek, and the Spirit Transfer Pagoda must not be broken. Before he finished speaking, the trident erupted with brilliant blue-gold light. A towering pillar of radiance pierced deep into the clouds, stirring some ancient law power. The sky began to twist. The once azure vault turned as if a giant invisible hand had stirred water, rotating into a colossal vortex tens of kilometers across. In an instant, the whole heavens dimmed, and even the Silver Moon domain, the strongest presence here, was suppressed and rapidly contracted. "Playing God," Hai Wuliang said arrogantly to Tang San's phantom. His twin halberds merged into a single long weapon. "Heaven-shocking wave kill." Huo Ji mirrored him. His phoenix-like eyes flashed as the pure white crescent moon blade erupted with boundless thunder. Thunder crescent moon slash. The trident's shadow spread over the ruins of Shrek City. With a lift of Tang San's phantom hand, countless tiny blue-gold threads unfurled from the light pillar, each strand entwined with fragments of plane origin, drawing them back into the golden tree. Ah Yin's aging halted. The tree even showed signs of recovery. Tang Wulin floated up as the Golden Dragon King bloodline walked obediently along the guiding threads, dyeing the golden tree's sap a pallid gold. Old Tang? Tang Wulin's hollowed pupils cleared. When he saw the phantom, the tremor in his soul made his Golden Dragon King scales ripple. This was not mere bloodline induction, but God-King-level soul pressure. "Boundless ocean," Hai Wuliang roared. The heaven-shocking wave kill and Huo Wuji's Thunder Crescent Moon Slash braided into a blue-white spiral that pulverized everything in its path. Tang San's phantom finally changed expression. When he met their combined attack with his trident, the Dharma idol was blasted back 1,000 meters. His ethereal form rippled like waves under a storm. Gu Yuena's silver hair turned to starlight. Where her dragon claws slashed, space split open into dark passages, and countless prisms condensed from the Silver Dragon King origin surged from those rifts. The prisms refracted the aftereffects of the combined assault perfectly, amplifying the spatial cutting power layered onto Hai Wuliang and Huoji's strikes. Crack. Spiderweb-like fissures spidered across Tang San's phantom chest. He looked down at his Dharma idol as it began to collapse, and for the first time a look of shock crossed his face. "You actually can. Your grandpa can." Hai Wuliang suddenly appeared above the phantom's head, his long halberd striking with the weight of an overturned sea. The blow hit the crown of Tang San's phantom. The blue-gold light that shielded his trident dimmed, and the Divine King's Dharma idol began to unravel from its head. At the same time, Huo Wuji's blade, wrapped in a thunderstorm, sliced into Tang San's waist. The Thunder Crescent Moon Slash's high-frequency vibrations shattered the divine force structure, and the blue-gold threads anchoring the Dharma idol snapped one after another. The last of the phantom's power was extinguished. "Go!" Guyuana no longer hesitated. A spatial rift tore open, showing a bustling East Sea suburb on the other side. The Spirit Beast army withdrew, and Halosa with his self-formed surveillance team vanished through the breach. Hai Wuliang and Huo Wuji lingered in the sky until the very end, then scoffed and turned away. The smoke over Shrek City slowly cleared. In the scarred ruins, only the faint glow of the golden ancient tree remained. Tang Hao held Ah Yin in his arms, eyes grave as he watched the retreating Spirit Beast army and the departing figures of Hai Wuliang and Huo Wuji. His fists clenched until his knuckles cracked. Little San's power was completely destroyed, he murmured, pain flickering across his face. "Brother Hao." Ah Yin leaned weakly against him, her fingertips brushing his furrowed brow. "We're still alive. Wu Lin is still alive. That's enough." From the wreckage, survivors of Shrek Academy crawled free. Spirit masters from the Spirit Transfer Pagoda supported one another, and Federation Army soldiers gritted their teeth while gathering the bodies of their fallen comrades. A world-shaking battle had ended, but everyone knew the real storm was only beginning. Jishou Chamber of Commerce Headquarters. A black-purple tear in space opened before Chen Zhou, expanding until a silver-haired figure stumbled through. He knew the rift led back to Shrek City, the scene of the recent battle. With hair like moonlight and purple eyes, Guyuana faltered into the chamber, and the space seemed to freeze. She fell toward Chen Zhou. He sat motionless and let her hit the floor with a dull thud. Then he waved and snapped the rift shut. She lay sprawled on the metal floor, silver hair fanned like a crushed galaxy. Chen Zhou regarded her and, ignoring the resentful glare in her purple eyes, squatted down with interest. "Why did you let him go?" he asked softly. Before she could answer, Guyuana panted and turned her head so Chen Zhou's fingers brushed the hair clinging to her cheek. "Before you ask that," she said, forcing a breath, "can you help me up first?" Chen Zhou nodded, reached out, and hauled her to her feet. He dropped her unceremoniously onto a sofa, then returned to his seat and watched the Silver Dragon King slump there. The late sun, slanting through the soul-guided glass, painted her scales a blood red. The blue-silver emperor vine, broken at her waist, jutted from her rear shoulder. Silver-blue blood oozed steadily from the wound. Guyuana exhaled slowly and explained, "The Golden Dragon King's bloodline is sealed by the Divine King. If I'd killed him outright, I couldn't have extracted the bloodline afterward with my current power." She tried to sit up straighter, not wanting to appear too beaten. Silver flames flickered at her fingertips, carefully burning away the remaining vine embedded in her wound. A sly light glinted in her purple eyes. "Besides," she continued, "that brat carries a divine sense imprint Tang San left. As long as the Golden Dragon King's seal remains, it's like a lighthouse in the dark." A spatter of silver blood burst from the wound on her shoulder blade. Tang Hao and Ah Yin are just scavengers stealing the plane's power. Restrained by their duties to the plane, they're at best second-rank gods. If I get to Dragon Valley and take the soul fragment of the Dragon God, they won't be able to touch me. The only way they can stop me is to fully awaken the Golden Dragon King's bloodline inside Tang Wulin and break the seal. Then, when I extract the Golden Dragon King's bloodline, I'll claim the Dragon God's power for myself. Chen Zhou watched her without moving, his eyes a deep, bottomless well. His fingertips tapped the armrest in a steady rhythm, like a silent countdown. "That sounds very reasonable," he said finally, his voice low and distant. "But do you know, Silver Dragon King, something in your soul is lying." "What?" Guyuana's pupils contracted. In an instant, her throat was seized. Chen Zhou's 5 fingers arrested in mid-air, and a giant palm of condensed energy materialized, closing on Guyuana's neck and hoisting her bodily into the air. The sofa exploded under the force. Her silver hair poured down like a waterfall. Guyuana clawed instinctively at the invisible grip. Her dragon claws scraped the air with a scream that tore at the ears, but where her hand struck, black cracks opened, the sign that the surrounding space was devouring energy. Her face drained of color. Breathless surprise flared in her purple eyes. And before she could translate that into rage, Chen Zhou's next words pushed her over the edge. "You said you wanted to extract the Golden Dragon King's bloodline?" Then, he leaned in, his shadow swallowing her face. "Why does your mental force surge into a storm every time you mention Tang Wulin? You are lying, Guyuana." Guyuana's fingers curled involuntarily. That half-second pause, barely a tenth of a second, was enough. The emotional ripple beneath her soul was caught perfectly by Chen Zhao's probing mental force. Anger, humiliation, struggle, and an almost invisible thread of something else. Attachment. "I'm not lying!" Guyuana choked and flailed, but her struggles were useless. Her toes didn't reach the floor. Chen Zhou's energy bindings tightened like a gallows noose. The Silver Dragon King's pupils slit into eerie vertical lines. The noble purple of her irises ran with liquid metal silver. A non-human roar boiled up from her throat. The vessels in her neck writhed like pythons beneath the skin. As Chen Zhou pressed the mental pressure further, the memory fragments Guyuana had buried deep within her soul finally split their seals and surged up to the surface, revealing things she had fought to keep hidden. Chapter 270, Love Tribulation? Interesting. Too interesting. Crack! A crisp crack echoed inside her skull. In an instant, the entire conference room was pulverized into dust by the raging dragon's force. Guyuana's scales bristled, her throat bone deformed under Chen Zhou's grip, but the Silver Dragon King's primal power burst out through her pores as a million razor needles. Chen Zhou's massive palm was instantly pockmarked. Those silver needles pierced space and then snapped aside in midair, arranging themselves into a strangling matrix of dragon language runes. He merely raised his left hand as if nothing was happening. Snap. With a casual snap of his fingers, every dragon language rune froze like a paused videotape. Guyuana spat a mouthful of silver blood. The razor needles, hovering a hair's breadth from Chen Zhou's eyes, disintegrated into stardust. Chen Zhou traced a crimson arc through the air with a finger. "This is your real killing move." The blood-colored trajectory condensed into chains that bound the rampaging Silver Dragon King into a cocoon. The things writhing along those chains were not runes, but countless miniature black holes. Each time Guyuana struggled, great patches of dragon scales were devoured by those voids, exposing pearlescent primal dragon bone beneath. "You have 17 hidden injuries," Chen Zhou said as he dragged the chained dragon cocoon toward him. Tang Hao's clear sky hammer intent, Ah Yin's life corrosion, Tang San's sea god imprint. With every name he spoke, the chains tightened. The most interesting, they pierced into the soft hollow between her brows. "Ah!" the silver-haired woman screamed, a bone-wrenching dragon roar. Her skull seemed to go transparent before Chen Zhou, revealing golden-red filaments woven across the surface of her brain tissue, an emotional control imprint forcefully implanted. The love tribulation backdoor Tang San prepared for his son. Guyuana's struggle cut off like a snapped wire. Her fury turned to disbelief and then to raw terror. Sparks flared where the chains met the cocoon. Her cervical vertebrae cracked under pressure, and the faint dragon horns hidden in her silver hair swelled threefold, signs that the Silver Dragon King was on the verge of revealing her true form. Chen Zhou suddenly released the chains. Bang! The cocoon slammed into the floor and sent up a cloud of silver dust. Guyuana curled into herself at the center of the turbulence, her dragonized right claw clamped over her temple. The golden-red threads writhed through her brain. Every twitch sent white-hot pain gnawing at her bones. Silver blood beaded at her bitten lips and hissed as it ate into the metal floor. "Help me!" Hatred flared in her eyes. No one would have an imprint put into their mind willingly, not even with the lure of a golden dragon king's bloodline. Chen Zhou believed she might be foolish in some ways, but not that foolish. A reddish-gold light flared from her eyes, and the slumbering soul beneath that light began to stir. Chen Zhou's finger pressed the glabella between her brows, and Gu Yuena's body convulsed. In her soul world, the silver ocean was being swallowed by that reddish-gold glow. Chen Zhou's consciousness became a surgeon's scalpel, slicing precisely into the knots of those golden-red threads. "Bear with it." His voice resounded directly into her soul. Dazzling light erupted from his fingertips as dozens of hair-thin tendrils slid along her neural synapses. Strange alchemy sigils appeared on those filaments. Inch by inch they advanced, counteracting the divine imprint Tang San had left. Gu Yuena's pupils dilated to the extreme. Her optic nerves relayed two utterly conflicting visions. Deep in the silver dragon temple of her mind, Tang Wulin in a Shrek uniform smiled at her. In the real world, the young man's face warped into Tang San's phantom image. "No, this isn't." Her claws scraped the floor, her face contorted. The forcibly planted emotional fragments had begun to backfire, a tide of false feelings battering her true consciousness. Chen Zhou frowned for the first time. The golden red filaments were rooted deep in her spiritual core. Pulling them out by force would likely cause irrevocable damage. Worse, they were continuously absorbing ambient energy to repair themselves. The source of that energy was precisely the seal on Tang Wulin, far away at Shrek. Sensing the theft, a trident-shaped divine punishment, Tang San had left as a failsafe materialized, a phantom trident tip wreathed in blue-gold lightning, aiming straight for Chen Zhou's glabella. It was Tang San's last resort, an automatic divine retaliation for anyone who touched his son's emotional bond. A petty trick. Chen Zhou didn't move the finger at her brow. The reddish-gold light in his eyes condensed into needles, and he unleashed alchemy. Heaven and earth refinement. Desire-severing God-destroyer stab. Once the needles of reddish gold lanced from his pupils, the world seemed to dim under a dark red filter. Dust frozen in midair hung like glittering beads. Gu Yuena's silver hair, ruffled by pain, froze into solidified waves. Only the sea god trident continued to pierce the shackles of time, and yet needle met point. Hiss! Instead of an explosion, the collision sounded like hot iron plunged into water. Tang San's divine punishment attack evaporated like mist under a scorching sun. All evaporated blue-gold particles were greedily absorbed by the alchemy array that bloomed in Chen Zhou's left hand. Gu Yuena convulsed. The silver radiance escaping from her 7 orifices was captured by that array and condensed into a miniature galaxy-like vortex in Chen Zhou's palm. Any limit Douluo seeing it would be chilled. Each star was a fragment of the Silver Dragon King's emotions. See clearly. Chen Zhou's voice carried a magnetic resonance. These are false. A strange smile tugged at his lips, like someone amused by a clever trick. He crushed the false emotional fragments into a single speck of light and hurled it toward the retreating golden red threads that were reaching back toward Tang Wulin. With those amplification fragments removed from Gu Yuena's memories, all the false pain and humiliation would be transferred back to Tang San and his son. The speck he sent toward Tang Wulin would infect Tang Wulin's memories of Gu Yuenair, stirring emotions in them over and over, eventually pitting the two against each other. Interesting. Too interesting. BG? Chen Zhou picked Gu Yuena up in his arms and spoke softly. Chapter 271. Master, I didn't get to fight to my heart's content. When Chen Zhou's voice cut through the air and the clear, bell-like incantation rolled through the room, time itself seemed to hitch. The brass handle of the oak door began to glow with a wet, green light that ran like sap through the wood grain, twining into ancient totems. The door opened of its own accord. Tens of thousands of emerald fragments poured from the crack and coalesced into a liquid stardust that hung in the air. From that tide stepped a woman, graceful and composed, treading on the emerald flow. As her skirt brushed the threshold, the liquid gems broke into a fine, rustling rain that dissolved into a medicinal mist as it touched the floor. This was BG, the humanoid manifestation of the 100,000-year spirit beast, the emerald swan, the compassionate holy hand of the Star Dew Great Forest. She stood in the emerald haze like a living plant from deep mountains, stretching branch-like limbs. Her hair fell to her ankles, not ordinary black, but a luminous silk of solidified emerald that shimmered whenever she tilted her head. 12 genuine velvet feathers were woven into her hair, each tipped with a dewdrop-like green diamond that chimed faintly by her ears. Most arresting were her delicate hands, hidden in wide, translucent sleeves. When she tucked a stray emerald strand behind her ear, vein-like healing patterns flowed across her fingertips, leaf vein designs that gleamed like starlight under her cool skin. Legend said the touch of those hands could turn a wound's memory of pain into fragrant flowers. "Master Chen Zhou," she said softly, her voice like dew dripping onto moss. When she bowed, an emerald yingluo at her waist chimed, producing overtones like a harp. A sash of 10,000-year tree core cinched her slim waist, silver embroidery depicting swans flying over a moon. As she breathed, the silver thread seemed to ripple across the dark green satin. Even her eyelashes carried the color of life. When she lifted her rippling green eyes, the whole room softened, an effect of the century-spanning cultivation condensed in the emerald life flowing in her pupils. 3 teardrop-shaped emerald crystals glittered at the corner of her left eye, the fabled mark of compassion. Each life BG healed left a faint light there. "Is someone injured?" she asked. Her smile seemed to coax new buds from the potted plants. Chen Zhou regarded her calmly, then reached out and said, "Your master has fainted. Take her." "Look at the mess in my office," he added. The place was wrecked. Recent chaos had nearly destroyed his office. Ripples of worry appeared in BG's emerald eyes as she stepped forward to gather the silver-haired girl, Gu Yuena. Before BG's slender fingers even touched the unconscious woman, layers of verdant light wrapped around her like living things. The halos hissed softly against the wounds, neutralizing the lingering blue-silver emperor toxins into wisps of green smoke. "Master's divine core is injured," BG said, brow lighting with alarm. This is a rule-based injury left by the sea god Trident?" She spun to Chen Zhou, her long emerald hair stirring though there was no breeze. The presence of a 100,000-year spirit beast filled the air with the scent of grass and wood. "Please, Master Chen Zhou, explain." "I have no obligation to explain." Chen Zhou snapped his fingers. The ruined office twisted and reassembled itself. Shattered soul guide lamps flew back to the ceiling. Torn carpets rewove their patterns, and even metal walls, pulverized by draconic force, healed as if time reversed. "I have already received my payment." Only then did BG notice the ring on Chen Zhou's left ring finger, silver scales woven around it. The scales shimmered with spatial fluctuations identical to Gu Yuena's. The emerald swan's pupils tightened. "You took Master's original dragon scales?" "Healing fee." Chen Zhou rotated the ring. The reflected light scattered like fragmented stars across his face. Then he leaned close to BG's ear. The alchemy master's warm breath frosted the tips of her ears. "From now on, you and yours belong exclusively to my Jisho Chamber of Commerce." His normally jet-black eyes flared with crimson gold light, a primal radiance that crushed at BG's soul, body, and origin. For an instant, she felt utterly overpowered, unable to form a thought of resistance. BG staggered 2 steps back, still holding the unconscious Gu Yuena. For the first time in 100,000 years, the Emerald Swan recognized that the being before her was not merely human, but a higher-dimensional predator. The crimson gold in Chen Zhou's eyes spoke of ancient legends, cosmic beasts that fed on worlds. "I understand." Her bowed head hid the shock and fear flickering behind the emerald hair. As the Star Doe Great Forest's healing hand, she sensed the shackles that had rested dormant in her master had been shattered, and that in exchange, the fate of her entire spirit beast line had been tied to an unknown thread. "Take her down for treatment," Chen Zhou ordered, "and from now on, you'll replace her as secretary." He spoke in the same soft tone as if deciding nothing more than who would fetch tea. BG dared not show surprise. Like a willow in a gale, she yielded. She lifted Gu Yuena more carefully and answered, "Please rest assured, I will do everything I can to heal Master and help her recover quickly." Even a 100,000-year spirit beast was used to standing behind others, dependent on stronger forces. Compared to 10,000-year spirit beasts with great combat ability, she had always been slight. Feeling Chen Zhou's fundamental oppression, BG accepted her place, submission. Master, I didn't get to fight to my heart's content, came a bright, protesting voice elsewhere. If you hadn't told us to retreat, those two wouldn't have needed Old Huo at all. I could have handled those two sneaky rats myself. Hai Wuliang grinned, using law power to conjure a long, looping water slide in midair. The petite Xuanli giggled like a bell as she slid along it. Hai Wuliang and Huo Wuji were all too happy to indulge this truly young master's playfulness. Chen Zhou lounged in a chair, enjoying a rare moment of leisure. He glanced at Hai Wuliang and dryly said, "You have to understand, even if those two are trash and thieves, they are still the Plane Master and the world core of Douluo Plane. If they had gone all out and detonated the plane power and world core, even with tremendous power, I could at best prevent the world's outright destruction. But by then, the world would be barren, lifeless. Was all our work supposed to lead to that?" Hai Wuliang's laugh died into an awkward chuckle. "I just got a little carried away?" Chapter 272, The Roaring Machine. Beast World. Huo Wuji shook his head beside him, feeling helpless toward Hai Wuliang. "Old Hai, you can't put it like that. This isn't the world we used to know. It simply can't withstand the consequences of our full-power outbreaks for long. No matter how you look at it, this world is too weak," Hai Wuliang grumbled. Chen Zhou only nodded, not dwelling on the complaint. "It doesn't matter. After I clear out the trash inside, I can promote this world plane myself. But for now, it's time to welcome our new companions." At that, Hai Wuliang and Huo Wuji's eyes both lit with sharp interest. Though the Mecha Beast Clan was loyal to Chen Zhou, old disputes lingered from before the Machine Beast World's destruction. In the Beast Race, Hu Shatian and the Golden Claw God were both top-tier powerhouses and valued commanders. At this moment, they were each stirring conflict against the Sun-Moon Federation in the Star Luo Empire and the Douling Empire. In the Machine Race, Huo Tianshu headed the Supreme Research Group. Research was research, and it didn't suit someone who wanted to exercise overt power. So the Machine Race had long been backed by Huo Wuji in his role as president of the Jishou Chamber of Commerce. Hai Wuliang was impulsive and warlike, unsuited to the kind of restrained leadership Huo Wuji could provide. Untempered by time, he was better as muscle than as a ruler, useful as Chen Zhou's guard, but nothing more. Both men therefore watched expectantly for the next powerhouse to rise from the Machine Race's history. The water ran off, and Xuanli rose into the air, landing softly in Chen Zhou's arms. Though she had slid down the water slide, Hai Wuliang had been distracted, ensuring not a single drop soaked her little dress. "Giggle, brother. I still want to play with Uncle Hai later," Xuanli chirped. The child's large eyes looked up at Chen Zhou, her small head nestling against him. This delicate girl was the embodiment of the planet's former core, a genuine star god. If Chen Zhou hadn't placed a seal within her, her power would have rivaled Hai Wuliang's. "Be good, Xuanli. It's time to study. Shall we finish the books for today first?" Chen Zhou asked, love almost spilling from his eyes. No alchemist or supreme scholar could help but adore such an exceptional pupil. A star god is a being born from a planet's core, theoretically gifted with unparalleled learning capacity. But because most star gods emerge fully formed with the authority of their planet already merged with their will, they're mature from the start. Teaching them is often twice the effort for half the result. Xuanli, however, was different. The Douluo Star's core had been taken by Yin. Xuanli's soul and consciousness were born from the planet's last wisp of sentience. She was, in essence, a premature star god, immature, malleable, and thus uniquely teachable. In Chen Zhou's hands, profound, mysterious alchemy became simple arithmetic. Xuanli absorbed it easily, the lessons resonated with the world's workings, and she could glimpse their mysteries at any time. Xuanli pouted and squirmed in his arms, the skirt of starlight brushing his wrist and scattering tiny halos of light. Though born of an ancient planet's core, she behaved like any ordinary child, reluctant to study. Her dependence on Chen Zhou, however, won out. Looking up with a starlit face, she pleaded, "Promise me, after I study, I can play Spiral Water Dragon with Uncle Hai." Chen Zhou tapped her smooth forehead and smiled at the rippling starlight barrier. "You little troublemaker. You just dismantled the lab's protective arrays yesterday, and today you want to undo the garden? Hey, can I, please?" Xuanli's voice was like a clear stream, bubbling with innocence and curiosity. Her eyes shone with expectation, and Chen Zhou's resistance melted. "All right," he said, tenderness rising. "Study well, and we'll go." "Yay!" She twirled excitedly in his arms, life and exuberance restored. Chen Zhou set her down and watched her skip away, a gentle smile lingering on his face. "Let's go. Time to welcome our new companions." A spatial gate opened, a portal into the machine beast world. The plane had long since lost the nourishment of its core. Its barren land was reddish-brown, the soil cracked like dried blood, fissures snaking across the surface like veins that could no longer pump life. The sky hung like a rusted iron dome, streaked with occasional signal lights that flashed like the last twitches of dying nerves. Crouched on that damaged skin of the world were colossal tombs of concrete and steel, factories of the Mecha Beast Clan, the pumps forcing life into a corpse. Gears roared like persistent tinnitus. Conveyor belts writhed like armies of steel centipedes along assembly lines that gnawed at remnants of profound iron. Red-hot metal flowed and solidified in molds, and from the furnaces arose machine beast warriors. Spines of hydraulic rods, knuckles ringed with riveted saw teeth, heads embedded with inactive crimson optical lenses. Each new body's arrival on the line issued a metallic cry, birth, but more like hammering the final nail into a coffin. Atop a high tower, a purple crystal convulsed. Hundreds of machine beast warriors stood on the casting plaza like a square of tombstones awaiting inspection, their steel skulls staring hollowly at the sky. As the original energy's purple light poured down, those optical lenses flared to life with greedy purple fire. The newborn warriors flexed their joints in tremulous motion. Hydraulic pumps hissed their first hot breaths. Their hip plates were still stained with the amniotic coolant of the foundry. This was the Mecha Beast Clan's requiem. With the assembly line as pen and tens of thousands of tons of steel as ink, they carved the sound of interlocking gears in place of heartbeats onto the scarred skin of a dying world. Standing before such a tableau, Chen Zhou's thoughts drifted. Individual power ultimately meant little. Once, in pursuit of truth, he had researched forbidden alchemy alone, building portals to alternate dimensions. His plan had been disrupted by outside forces, forcing him into an alternate dimension where his strong body was annihilated and his supreme soul shattered in the timeless chaos. Given a second chance here on the Douluo plane, aided by the original energy amethyst and the War King Token, he would not repeat the mistake of lone heroism. He would build, step by step, planets and planes into a vast rear base for his quest for truth. He planned to raise the Mecha Beast Clan to prominence across infinite alternate dimensions so they could escort him on that journey. He didn't concern himself with the next step, infusing those newly cast machine beast warriors with life. That task belonged to Lan Jia. Chen Zhou led Hai Wuliang and Huo Wuji up a hill used for gathering rare minerals. These ores were the consumable materials the War King Token used to summon heroic spirits from the long history of the machine beast world. Now that the War King Token had appeared again in this world, a faint, mysterious rhythm stirred the broken land. The token, bound with countless heroic spirits from the machine beast world's history, pulsed and sent ripples through space. When those ripples touched the rare minerals below, the metals softened and coalesced into a yellow glowing cocoon. The War King Token drew a small mass of molten metal and shaped it into a life core that radiated whirlwind and lightning, ice and space. As the core formed, the air hummed with strain. Surrounding metal fragments rose like needles to a magnet. "Looks like a big shot," Huo Wuji muttered, narrowing his eyes. A cluster of orange flames danced across his fingertips, turning scattered dross into beads of molten metal. From behind his water curtain, Hai Wuliang whistled. Judging by the battlefield signature, he's at least an 18th level machine beast warrior. I can't tell yet if he's beast race or machine race. The water pattern insignia on his shoulder armor resonated and trembled as the purple light from the primordial energy amethyst converged into the cocoon. Life stirred. The light from the War King Token flared, and the heroic spirit began to return. The metal cocoon contracted rapidly, as if an invisible hand were squeezing it to the limit, then exploded in a blinding golden flash. A circular shockwave blasted outward, melting debris within 100 meters into scalding iron rain. Chen Zhou's robes whipped in the energy storm, but his golden red eyes cut straight through the light curtain to the figure forming inside the cocoon. With a crisp, mechanical crack, the core seemed to gain a soul. The cocoon's shell peeled back like lotus petals. A golden armored right arm burst free. When its 5 fingers spread, spiderweb-like fissures tore through the surrounding space. Silver blue energy streamed from those cracks and coiled around the armor like living vines, etching storm spiral patterns into the metal. The cocoon shattered completely. At the heart of the energy vortex stood a 3-meter-tall machine body of intertwined gold and silver. 4 deformable wings, metallic as judgment, unfolded from his back and scorched trails across the void. A sword-shaped insignia was carved into his chest. The mere sight of it felt like a blade through the air. The reborn machine race warrior opened gear-like, shining eyes. Data streams pulsed through his blue and white irises, the load of his soul and memory from his prime. He strode toward the 3 of them. In his arrogant gaze, only Chen Zhou, his master, earned any hint of respect. Hai Wuliang narrowed his eyes. The man's bearing felt familiar, someone of similarly proud temperament. Lightning Tribe. Yun Taishi greets my lord. I am willing to die for my lord, the warrior intoned. Metal joints clicked as he dropped to one knee, his 4 wings folded into a cape. The sword pattern on his chest flared to life and coalesced into a materialized greatsword, suspended above his head, the ancient oath of fealty of the Lightning Tribe. Huo Wuji, alarmed, pressed a hand to Hai Wuliang's shoulder. Wait, what tribe did he say? Lightning Tribe. Are you deaf, old Huo? Hai Wuliang snapped. Huo Wuji rolled his eyes. You're the one who's deaf. How can the Lightning Tribe control ice and space? Hai Wuliang's expression changed as he watched. Though a machine race warrior, this Yun Taishi seemed to stir multiple laws at once. Lightning braided with ice, whirlwinds dancing with spatial distortion. Chen Zhou gestured. Rise, it's better to take human form. Yun Taishi nodded, and under Chen Zhou's hand, the primordial energy Amethyst and the War King Token retracted into Chen Zhou's body. The machine warrior shifted and became a handsome, blonde youth. His face was like a 1,000-year-old glacier, cold and austere. A heavy sword was strapped to his back. 2 Qingfeng swords hung at his waist, their scabbards dusted with fine ice crystals. His pupils were blue and white vortices. When he stared, the air at that spot hiccuped for a fraction of a second, an indication of spatial law fused into his essence. Hai Wuliang and Huo Wuji exchanged looks. This machine race compatriot was a bit pretentious. His human form, with slightly Chunibu-esque wanderer garb and pose, plus that deliberately cold expression, made his self-styled gravitas obvious. Case closed. Chunibu youth. Still, there was no denying his striking appearance. The twin swords at his waist and the heavy blade on his back radiated power, and even the 2 older men felt a flicker of envy. Yun Taishi, have I heard that name before? City Lord of Energy City? Hai Wuliang asked. Yun Taishi's face remained icy. He glanced at Hai Wuliang with cool dismissal. Before you ask about others, shouldn't you introduce yourselves? Opposites clashed. Hai Wuliang's arrogance and Yun Taishi's aloofness created a slight tension. Huo Wuji sighed, rubbed his forehead, and stepped forward to diffuse it. I'm Huo Wuji, and this is Hai Wuliang. We're both under our lord now. Comrades should be honest. Why should the chief of the Lightning Tribe be wary of us? The blue and white vortex in Yun Taishi's eyes paused. After 3 seconds' silence, he unslung his heavy sword and drove it into the ground. Where the blade sank, frost crystals spread over the earth in a 10-meter radius, and a cold mist rose. For the first time, his stiff composure softened, and he spoke with a hint of life. Yun Taishi, City Lord of Energy City, Chief of the Lightning Tribe, and Chief of the Ice Tribe as well. Pleased to meet you both. Hai Wuliang and Huo Wuji stared at each other in stunned surprise. Yun Taishi showed no pride at their reactions. He simply watched them with a gaze like an ancient well under polar ice. Deep, silent, detached. You're chief of the ice tribe too? How? Hai Wuliang began. Yun Taishi brushed the ice crystals on his scabbard, and the shards rose at his fingertip to form a miniature snow curtain that quietly scattered. Historically, the ice tribe has been allied to the lightning tribe. In my era, the ice tribe lost its great generals early and was merged with the lightning tribe in Energy City. When I became city lord, both tribes recommended me, so I took on leadership of both. Huo Wuji's earlier surprise hardened into sober recognition. That explains how you can command multiple elemental laws, ice and lightning, even space. Chen Zhou nodded, then clapped his hands lightly. No need to dwell on the past. Look to the future. Taishi, learn the laws of this world well. When you are ready, we will unify the world planes and forge a new glory for the Machine Beast tribe. Invisible runes spun up beneath Chen Zhou's feet and coiled around the four of them. In the next instant, they were back in the garden of Chen Zhou's residence inside the Jishou Chamber of Commerce. Yun Taishi's eyes brightened at the display of technique, such mastery of spatial law. Yun Taishi obeys, he said. Chapter 274. Let's go all out with our Tang sect one last time. To go all out means turning everything you have left into a single, desperate gamble when there is nowhere left to retreat. Such a flame, when pressed to its fullest, can etch the most brilliant chapters into history, or it can be the last, unheard breath of a ruined gambler. The Federation could not keep delaying the front lines for Shrek Academy forever. If not for the staunch protection of Chen Xinji and Yu Guanji, the Federation would never have dispatched the Mecha Division, Soul Master Legions, and dozens of titled Douluos from the War God Hall to reinforce them. Even with that aid, when Chen Xinji was finally forced to withdraw, Shrek Academy and the Tang sect had paid dearly. Shrek Academy, a bastion that had stood for 10,000 years, lay in rubble. The Tang sect could not even hold on to its last headquarters. The Spirit Transfer Pagoda, having entered the battle late, had not been as severely weakened. Only Qiangu Dongfeng and Qiangu Qingfeng suffered noticeable injuries. Still, Qiangu Dongfeng, who had long harbored a deep hatred for Shrek Academy and Yunming, now stood on the top floor of the pagoda, stunned into silence as he looked at the blood-dyed sky. Gods, the realm of gods once a distant dream, now hung over the entire Douluo continent like a storm cloud. That power was beyond mortal reckoning. How could humans possibly contend with a god? Above the ruins of Shrek Academy, ragged breaths rose and fell. Zhuo Shi, Feng Wuyu, and Lan Muzi, once wind-dominant masters, leaned grievously wounded against shattered stone columns. The Sea God Pavilion's final barrier had held for only 17 seconds against a god-level assault. They hadn't even seen their attacker clearly. Over at the Spirit Transfer Pagoda, Lan Muzi began, but a violent cough cut him off. Blood seeped between his fingers. Cough, that old fox, Qiangu Dongfeng. Feng Wuyu ground his teeth and tried to push himself up, only to stagger and drop to his knees. His right arm was marred with a purplish-black corrosion, the mark of divine erosion. They still have 80% of their combat strength, and we. Zhuo Shi raised a hand to stop him. The normally fierce Red Dragon Douluo was, in this moment, unusually composed. He looked up at the sky with bloodshot eyes and said quietly, "It isn't the Spirit Transfer Pagoda's fault." Silence followed. Even if the pagoda had joined earlier, what would it have changed? In front of those four figures, the difference between a 98th level and a 95th level was the difference between an ant and a slightly larger ant. In the center of the ruins, Tang Wulin knelt with his fingers dug deep into the earth. His teacher, the Sea God Pavilion Master Yunming, the one who had cared for and guided him, lay before him. Blood slithered from under Tang Wulin's nails and mixed with dirt, dripping onto Yunming's pale face. Yunming's body had not been reduced to a wasteland of broken bones, but he had died shielding Shrek's students from the aftershocks of those god-level clashes, taking wave after wave of recoil so the students could live. Cao Deji lay motionless on the ground, staring up at the sky. Zhang Xin had found a flask of wine somewhere and sipped it slowly, occasionally offering it to Cao Deji. The question hung in the air. Is the Tang sect going to perish? Their own god-level combatants were severely injured and had to retreat into the world's core to recuperate. The Jishou Chamber of Commerce was sweeping in with unstoppable momentum. The ruins felt suffocated by despair, the wind whispered like a lost soul's sigh, and the scent of blood filled the air, gritty with dust. Tang Wulin lay over Yunming, fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. He stared at his teacher's calm face, the expression half closed and faintly smiling, as if Yunming had long since accepted his fate. The flame of life in that peerless expert had dwindled to a fragile ember. "No, it can't end like this," Tang Wulin said hoarsely. He looked up and fixed his bloodshot gaze on the crimson-streaked sky. Memories of Guyo and Nair flickered through him, beautiful moments, painful and infuriating, but never surrender. Determination hardened in his eyes. He would not fall here. He had too much left to do. Find Guyo, protect those he loved, and restore Shrek Academy's place on the Douluo continent. Tang Wulin drew a deep breath. A faint golden light began to seep from his body, the Golden Dragon King bloodline stirring. He closed his eyes and felt power flowing through him, a rising tide he could no longer ignore. He began to mobilize the dragon blood within, pushing to release even greater strength. His pulse quickened. The blood in his veins felt like boiling lava. Each beat was a war drum, awakening his fighting spirit. With the ninth seal lifted, his skin sprouted dragon scales. Strength, endurance, and speed all surged. He was now on par with a spirit saint-level warrior. Yet when he thought of Guyuena, who could channel godlike force, Tang Wulin still felt the sting of inadequacy. After Chen Zhou stripped the love tribulation contingency Tang San had hidden in Guyuena's spirit, he had mischievously followed the golden blue threads of fate and gathered the memory catalysts, those fragments that arouse the deepest emotions in a person's past, and gave them to Tang Wulin. When Tang Wulin awoke, his head was full of amplified memories of Guyu and Nair, imprints of longing and love that filled him to the brim. Each recollection fanned his resolve. He could not give up. He would not give up. "We have nothing left to lose," Cao Deji said suddenly, as if remembering something. His voice was flat, resigned, but there was an edge to it too. Zhang Xin, who had been quietly drinking, seemed to understand in a flash. Years alongside Cao Deji had tuned him to these shifts. He stood, and when every eye turned to him, he spoke softly but clearly. "We still have a chance to go all out." He met the looks of the shattered survivors one by one. "I wonder if the members of Shrek Academy will simply surrender to the Jisho Chamber of Commerce, or will you join our Tang sect for one last crazy gamble?" Chapter 275, Ice and Fire. Well, Zhangxin was very calm. As the Douluo of sentiment, he was sensitive to emotion, but after the Tang sect had suffered one crushing blow after another, his ability to outwardly express feeling had long since atrophied. The sadness, grief, and rage buried deep in his heart could only be swallowed and torturingly replayed in his dreams. Our Tang sect, from ancient times to the present, has weathered countless storms, yet we have never known the word surrender. Our Tang sect, even if only one person remains, will never yield to the enemy. Our Tang sect, even if only one breath remains, will never stop resisting. Our Tang sect, even if only one drop of blood remains, will not let the enemy go unpunished. Shrek, are you willing to take a gamble with us? When Zhang Xin issued the invitation, the elders of Shrek Academy's Sea God Pavilion first exchanged puzzled looks. Then, taking in the surrounding ruins, millennia of foundation destroyed in an instant, an unnamed fury flared in their chests. It was indignation against a mighty foe and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Zuoshi was the first to rise, his lined face set with determination. Shrek never admits defeat. What we lost, we will reclaim with our own hands. Feng Wuyu hauled himself to his feet, his purplish-black arm a shocking sight, but his gaze was unshakable. "I, Feng Wuyu, have spent my life forging, and I will not let it end like this. Today, let our broken bodies forge one last glory." Long Ye was spat out a mouthful of clotted blood and forced a bitter, resolute smile. Shrek and the Tang sect share the same roots, life and death bound together. If the Tang sect stands firm, how can Shrek back down? Yun Ming, pale and severely drained while resting in Yali's arms, remained the group's backbone. Seeing everyone look to him, this man, once the continent's strongest, the one said to support the heavens and probe the netherworld, managed a bitter smile and declared firmly, "Shrek Academy will not retreat." Only after receiving everyone's assent did Zhangxin reveal a Tang sect secret, passed down in whispers from sect master to vice master for generations, the ice and fire yin-yang well. Fei Gu, fat, soared overhead, its bloated, enormous body large enough to carry Chen Zhou. Chen Zhou sat atop it, Xuan Li held in his arms, and the breeze lifted her hair. Naturally attuned to the world and blessed by fate, Xuan Li loved all things in nature. She waved small hands at the wind as if it were a playmate, each motion seeming to converse with the world itself. The creature's wings, which the genes etched into the primal energy amethyst had once hardened into blade-like metal, now felt warm and soft beneath them. Sunset painted blood-red spots across its spread wings as Chen Zhou looked down at the winding mountain range. On the eastern horizon, a valley steamed with red and blue mist braided together. That was the ice and fire yin-yang well. Its energy field was fluctuating violently and abnormally. The entire valley lay shrouded in poisonous haze, and within lurked an unknown number of traps and protections left by generations of Tang sect masters. Chen Zhou, who had seen the world's memories and taken other people's legacies for himself, sneered. Was this the true nature of Tang San's descendants? Chen Zhou's hand, stroking Xuanli's hair, stilled. He turned and saw Gu Yuena sitting to the side, her eyes colorless. Silver hair fell to her waist, swaying in the wind. Her purple eyes were hollow and deep, as if able to swallow light, but they betrayed a sorrow beyond the mortal world, perhaps even hatred. Below is where your dragon clan's 2 dragon kings fell, Chen Zhou said lightly. Do you want to go down and see? He smiled faintly. How gratifying, he thought, to watch that already magnificent soul bloom further under his guidance. Guena had deeply doubted herself since taking human form. If Tang San's influence had shaped her, then much of what she believed might be false. Her growth, the shared training with Tang Wulin and Shi Xie, the life and death reliance on Tang Wulin on the Spirit Ascension platform, all possibly contrived. Even the stirring that awoke her as Silver Dragon King, the soul thrum drawn to Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon King blood, could have been an engineered emotional snare. Gu Yuena's fingertips dug into her palm. Her tough hand did not break beneath her fair, neat nails. She raised those hollow purple eyes, her silvery hair whipped about in the high-altitude wind. In that instant, an overwhelming cold dragon might burst from her. Clouds for 100-mile radius condensed into glittering ice crystals. Go. Her voice was colder than the polar wastes. Chen Zhou approved, pleased by hatred turned to strength. He patted Fat Gu, signaling it on. The giant bird cooed happily, flapped, and dove toward the yin-yang well. The valley's mist closed around them. The red and blue halos intertwined and rose like the fierce gleam in a great dragon's eyes upon waking. Chen Zhou stood on Fat Gu's back, his gaze piercing the poisonous haze and barrier to the sacred place the Tang sect had guarded for generations. A smirk tugged at his mouth, amused that mortal hands dared to seal a relic of ancient dragon kings. Gu Yuena's silver hair streamed wildly. Her knuckles whitened, nails biting into flesh, but she felt no pain. A thought hammered in her skull like a maul. Everything about her might be false. Her feelings, her memories, her bonds, all could be predefined. She imagined herself as Tang San's pawn, a link to bind his descendants. The thought made her tremble. The first time she met Tang Wulin, she had felt a stirring she called fate. Now she wondered if it was only the Golden Dragon King bloodline naturally drawn to a Silver Dragon King's soul, a trap arranged by others. Humiliation, anger, hatred, these emotions flared, threatening to shatter her. Do you feel it? Chen Zhou asked, turning to her. His tone was light, almost teasing. The Tang sect believes they've mastered the Dragon Clan's legacy, presuming to take the essences of the Ice and Fire Dragon Kings after their fall and use them to cultivate those so-called immortal herbs. He pointed ahead, eyes cold. And you, the dignified Silver Dragon King, have been kept in the dark all this time. Chapter 276, See Who Stands Before You. Gu Yuena's purple eyes narrowed until they were slits, and a low, dragon-like roar rumbled from her throat. The wind pressure above the ice and fire yin-yang, well intensified at once as Fei Gu's broad wings churned the air, tearing a rift through the mist. Gu Yuena's silver hair whipped like living flame. She stared hard at the valley's core, where red and blue waters intertwined. Her dragon pupils contracted violently. That place should have been a sacred dragon site, yet humans had shrouded it in layers of poisonous mist and turned it into a Tang sect nursery for cultivating rare treasures. How dare they? Her voice was cold and ancient, like ice that had ground against ice for 10,000 years. Chen Zhou said nothing. He gently stroked Xuanli's hair as she nestled in his arms. The little girl sensed the danger and curled closer, though her emerald eyes couldn't help but peek down at the magnificent, mist-shrouded spring. As a heart born from the world's core, Xuanli felt a faint familiarity with the ice and fire yin-yang well. The cloying, poisonous fog made her uneasy. "Brother, I don't like this," she murmured. Chen Zhou looked at her, smiling as he smoothed her hair. "If you don't like it, we'll make it go away." "You really taught her that, didn't you?" Xuanli asked. Chen Zhou rubbed her head and extended his hand slowly. Heaven and earth refinement, myriad flower purifying rain. Unseen, a complex alchemy array bloomed across Fei Gu's back. Xuanli mimicked Chen Zhou's movements, extending her small hand. Pale green light particles shimmered from her fingertips and flowed into the array. In an instant, the clouds and mist above the valley twisted into a vortex. As Chen Zhou's fingers moved, an emerald torrent erupted from the array, a jade waterfall pouring down from the sky. The moment it hit the poisonous haze, a high, corrosive sizzle split the air. The dark green miasma dissolved visibly, revealing the red and blue spring eyes at the valley bottom. Cough, 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 came sudden violent hacking from the forest at the valley's edge. 7 Tang sect disciples who had been hiding in the mist convulsed, antidote beads bursting on their chests as purplish-green sores bloomed on their skin. Those who had long lived in the poison were the first to suffer the backlash of purification. Enemy attack! An alarm shrieked through the valley. Hundreds of hidden spirit tools flashed to life, weaving a net of laser-like beams toward the sky. Fei Gu gave a disdainful cry, spreading his wings to dozens of meters. The night wind-carved owl, a storm-controlling spirit beast favored by the winds of heaven and earth, bristled with pale green patterns across his feathers. Wind blades gathered and spun like living things, shredding the incoming spirit tool light. The beams struck metallic feathers, flaring with sparks, but failed to leave a single scratch. Guyuena leaped from Fei Gu's back. Her body stretched in midair, silver hair flowing like a waterfall, skirt fluttering. She was a drawn blade aimed at the valley. Crimson sparks sparked in her purple eyes as she unleashed the Silver Dragon King's domain. Instantly, the valley's plants writhed as if a hand had swept across them. The remaining pockets of mist that had just been cleansed condensed into ice crystals and fell in a tinkling rain. In moments, the domain crushed the 7 Tang sect disciples into a bloody mist. Fei Gu raised his head and roared, a thunderclap tearing the clouds apart. His wings whipped up a storm that shredded the poisonous fog that had clung to the ice and fire yin-yang well's mouth for generations. The carefully arranged poison arrays of Tang sect ancestors disintegrated under the purifying force, revealing the pristine scene at the bottom of the valley. A circular lake, 100 meters across, lay like a sleeping dragon's eye. Its surface was split. One half boiled crimson magma, the other shone with frosty blue spring water. Where red and blue met, colorful vapors rose, and strange plants grew along the springs. The heaven and earth energy was dense enough to seem liquid, at least 5 times the power of the Star Dew Great Forest's life lake. Even the lingering strength of the Ice and Fire Dragon King, long fallen, still nourished this forbidden place. "This is it. Prepare the serum," a hidden Tang sect disciple began, but his words froze as his body turned to ice. Guyuena floated above the spring eyes, silver hair still despite the wind, her right fingertip elongated into an ice crystal claw over a foot long, crimson blood beating at the tip. The disciples who had tried to trigger defensive spirit tools were now frozen sculptures, terror etched eternally on their faces. When Chen Zhou landed gently with Xuanli in his arms, the girl stared, wide-eyed, at the ice statues. She reached out and touched one, and the ice shattered into a shower of crystalline dust. Pure soul fluctuations spread from her, and the dust condensed into tiny ice butterflies that fluttered up and flew toward the red and blue spring eyes. "Cleared," Guyuena's voice said, cold as quenched steel. She retracted her dragon claw and turned to peer into the heart of the yin-yang well. "Who are you?" A clear, heroic female voice answered from the depths, carrying a battlefield commander's authority. Hot air rose from the valley as a miraculous plant blazed into being, fiery red and shaped like a cabbage and a ruby at once. Li Huo Xingjiao Shu, fierce flame apricot. At the same time, Yushang Qi Luoxian Pin, faint fragrance silk immortal, octagonal mysterious ice grass, and other immortal herbs reared up from their territories, vigilant and ready. The ice and fire yin-yang, well boiled over as plant-type spirit beasts' energies intertwined into an impenetrable net. The killing intent in Guyuena's purple eyes solidified. She advanced, and with every step, silver-blue frost bloomed on the ground beneath her. Those frost flowers spread like living things. Even the scalding spring water froze in their wake. Presumptuous! The octagonal, mysterious ice grass bellowed. Do you know this is the territory of the one from 20,000 years ago? You mean that thief, Tang San? Guyuena's lips twisted into a nearly sinister smile, her silver hair flickering as if with its own will. See who stands before you. She unleashed the Silver Dragon King's domain without restraint. The valley shook violently. The red and blue waters rose in waves several meters high. The immortal herbs, grown for 10,000 years, trembled together. It was a fear written deep in their bloodlines. The fiery Li Huo Xingjiaoshu's branches recoiled, retreating a step as its leaves curled shut. The fragrant domain of Yuxiang Qi, Luoxian Pin, was scattered by the dragon domain. The octagonal, mysterious ice grass, famed for freezing souls, now bore delicate ice crystals along its edges. The clash for the ice and fire yin-yang had erupted, and every life within the valley tightened as the two forces confronted one another. Guyuena's dominance and the invader's calm resolve met over the sleeping dragon's eye, and the long-buried history of that place began to stir once more. Chapter 277, Seeing the Co-Lord, Why Not Bow? The Silver Dragon King's reemergence into her true form sent the plant spirit beasts into a collective panic. They finally understood this silver-haired girl was not a mere human, but a higher existence. Chen Zhou stood at the edge of the clearing, cradling Xuanli. His fingertips tapped rhythmically through the little girl's hair. Xuanli looked up at the trembling immortal herbs. Her emerald eyes were full of sympathy. Brother, they're so scared. This is the price of occupying what was never theirs, Chen Zhou said quietly, eyes fixed on the ice and fire yin-yang well. Deep in the mingled red and blue springs, two dragon-shaped phantoms lay faintly visible, dormant dragon souls half preserved by the well's strange energies. For 10,000 years, those plants have soaked up energy from the dragon remains to grow, and they don't even understand gratitude. Instead, they pretend they belong to someone else. Guyuena's silver hair streamed wildly in the vortex of power. She clenched her right hand and summoned a spear of pure silver light, the exclusive weapon of the Silver Dragon King, the Silver Dragon Spear. When it sliced the air, it cracked space itself with tiny rifts. Her voice, cold as a biting northern wind, cut across the spring. If you know my identity as a dragon, then as spirit beasts, you should know what respect is. Why do you not bow when you see your co-lord? The spear's edge tore through the energy above the yin-yang well. Guyuena's purple eyes reflected the quivering herbs. The leaves of the Li Huo Xingshu, fierce flame apricot arrogant van, curled back as if in instinctive submission. It had never felt such pure, ancestral dragon suppression before, an inborn reverence for dragons encoded into the genes of plant spirit beasts. We were only following the contract. The octagonal mysterious ice grass's consciousness trembled. Guyuena's sneer revealed sharp dragon teeth. Contract, she spat. Whose contract? Tang San's? Or Huo Yuhao's, that loyal dog who couldn't even think for himself? The spear changed direction, thrusting down. The moment its tip pierced the boundary between the red and blue springs, the entire well shook as if a giant dragon had been roused. The two dragon energies that had been intertwined for millennia were forced apart, condensing into crimson and ice-blue phantoms in midair, the faltering remnants of the Fire Dragon King and the Ice Dragon King. In Chen Zhou's arms, Xuanli's eyes snapped open. Her emerald pupils reflected the two fading dragon souls. Gentle tendrils of pure soul energy extended from her like newborn shoots, wrapping the dragon consciousnesses to steady them. She reached out instinctively. Alchemical sigils identical to Chen Zhou's flared across her fingertips. Little Xuanli is incredible. Chen Zhou set her on his shoulder. She's awakened the dormant origin imprint. Looks like she hasn't been slacking in her lessons. Guyuena's bloodline surged at the sight of the weakened dragon souls. Rage, grief, and a profound sorrow boiled up inside her. The silver dragon spear gave a low, resonant roar. Thieves, she breathed. You dared use the Dragon King's remains as nourishment for spirit medicine? Under Xuanli's care, the red and blue souls slowly solidified, circling above the well and letting out silent roars. Being treated as an eternal, immortal spring for 10,000 years had filled them with humiliation and fury. The Lihuo Xingjiao Shu quivered. Silver Dragon King, we didn't know. Shut up! Gu Yuan's draconic might erupted. The silver dragon spear slashed. Half of the 100,000-year herb's branches and leaves were severed. Crimson sap sprayed and vaporized into a bloody mist. A nearby Yushangqi Luoxian pin, fragrance, wonderful silk immortal, shut its buds tight. Please, please calm your wrath. Chen Zhou lightly patted Xuanli's back as the alchemical matrix flowing from her fingertips expanded outward. Emerald light traced complex three-dimensional patterns on the ground that matched the layout of the ice and fire yin-yang well perfectly, an advanced origin tracing formation Chen Zhou had taught her. Brother, look, Xuanli pointed toward the depths. There are two shiny bones down there. The boiling springs suddenly stilled. The red and blue waters parted on their own, revealing two crystalline spirit bones lying on the well's floor. One burned like crimson crystal, the other shone like an ice-blue diamond, ancient dragon sigils coursing across their surfaces. Even from where she stood, Guyuana felt the fierce bloodline resonance pulsing from them. These were the true remains of the Ice Dragon King and the Fire Dragon King, far more potent than the diluted energies in the spring. Chen Zhou reached and took Guyuana's fair wrist in his hand, voice soft. They're only ignorant subjects. Growing here was never their intention. It's simply how the laws of nature and the well's energy combined. It's misplaced anger to condemn them. In a way, they're descendants of those dragons. The octagonal mysterious ice grass and the Li Huo Xingjiao Shu, creatures born of the well's exceptional conditions, could only form in such energy-forbidden zones where extreme opposition and balance coexisted. They were life forms grown by natural law. The true fault lay with the human spirit masters, who claimed this place as their exclusive domain. Guyuana's grip on the spear eased, the murderous light in her eyes dimming. She looked at the trembling plants and realized how close she'd come to venting her wrath on the innocent, something the former Silver Dragon King would not have done. Chen Zhou released her wrist, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Hatred can blind the clearest mind. I'll admit, I like watching a little of that uncontrolled drama. Xuanli tugged at Chen Zhou's collar and pointed as the two spirit bones rose toward the surface. Brother, they're glowing. The bones resonated with Xuanli's alchemy. The crimson crystal radiated distorted heat, forming a roaring fire dragon phantom. The blue diamond breathed cold, condensing into a circling ice dragon. The two spectral dragons intertwined and let loose silent, echoing roars. The spirit bones hovered, filling the air with a palpable pressure. What do you want? Guyuana asked, her voice colder but steadier than before. Facing Chen Zhou, her hatred gave way to something more complex. I'll give you the dragon bones and the energy, Chen Zhou said, eyes fixed on the dragon souls circling above. But I want those two dragon souls. What do you say? Guyuana stared at the two phantoms, her expression unreadable. Chen Zhou watched them too, his gaze calm, yet holding some plan within it. Guyuana's silver dragon spear trembled in her hand. A flicker of doubt passed through her purple eyes. The condition Chen Zhou proposed sounded simple, but it struck at the dragon clan's deepest taboo, what a dragon soul represented. As the Silver Dragon King, she understood that all too well. Dragon souls? For you? She said, ice cracking in her voice. Do you even know what you're asking for? Xuanli slid from Chen Zhou's shoulder and burrowed into his arms, pointing with a small, earnest finger at the red and blue phantoms entwined in the air. Is Big Brother going to help the little dragons go home? Her emerald eyes reflected the twisted, pained shapes of the dragon souls. They're being torn apart. Chen Zhou smiled, but his look was steady enough to make Guyuana's heart tighten. I'm not going to do what you fear, he replied quietly. If you give me those two dragon souls, it will be the best thing that can happen to them. Listening to him, Guyuana began to understand. The dragon souls of the Ice and Fire Dragon Kings had been drained to near nothing after 10 millennia. Even if she absorbed them, it would be difficult for them to regain full consciousness. Chen Zhou, however, controlled a far deeper power. Perhaps he really could let the dragon souls be reborn. After a long moment, she loosened her grip on the silver dragon spear. Her silver hair slipped free, and was tossed by the lingering eddies of energy. Tenderness flickered behind her cold eyes. "Fine," she said at last. Chen Zhou nodded and suddenly lifted Xuanli higher. "Then let our little princess preside over this." Xuanli blinked in alarm, but the familiar fluctuation of the dragon souls soothed her. Alchemy patterns, the same as Chen Zhou's, bloomed in her emerald pupils. Her small fingers moved in the air almost unconsciously, first like this, then like that. The childish voice guided the chaotic energies into order. Alchemical sigils knitted into matrices, and the matrices linked into a vast array. The entwined ice and fire dragon souls were gently drawn toward Xuanli's outstretched hands as if being led home. Chen Zhou murmured, rubbing the girl's cheek against his own, then held her in one arm while extending his other hand. But there's still one small thing missing. Runes carved themselves between heaven and earth at once. Chen Zhou's power, sourced from an ever-expanding spiritual world within him, no longer relied solely on ordinary spirit energy. The valley's dense life force streamed toward him like water to a siphon, feeding the work in his palm. The alchemy matrix in his hand bloomed with a dark light that seemed to swallow the sky. 10,000 years of energy from the ice and fire yin-yang, well poured into the runes like a funnel. The red and blue torrent reversed its flow. Xuanli reached out, fascinated, and touched the nearest sigil. Her pupils reflected a swirl of stars, an approach to energy that was more like the rhythm of living things than Chen Zhou's method. Reverse reconstruction, Chen Zhou's voice sounded through a veil of water. Guiding the two dragon souls with his fingertip, Chen Zhou watched as the complex geometry of the matrix began to self-replicate, building a three-dimensional nest in the void. The phantoms writhed and howled in pain, but their violent aura dimmed as they were reformed. From the depths of the well, a sharp voice flared. "Stop! You'll tear apart the ice and fire yin-yang well." Li Huo Xingjiaoshu's warning cut through the air. Gu Yuena snapped the spear horizontally, its tip hovering millimeters from the immortal herb's stem. "Say another word, and I'll destroy you where you stand." Her grip was cold and unyielding. The octagonal, mysterious ice grass wailed through consciousness. "Silver Dragon King, if the energy structure changes, we'll all die." Gu Yuena's fingers loosened a fraction. Even ancient 100,000-year plant spirits couldn't survive if the environment that sustained them collapsed. Their heavenly tribulation would come for them without mercy. She stared at the colony of plants, torn between anger and pity. Chen Zhou seemed to sense her turmoil and Xuanli's reluctance. He spoke calmly. "Don't worry, I still have use for them. I won't let them die here." It was not an empty promise. Other planes within the machine beast world had lain fallow for years. Chen Zhou had no intention of letting this place become a mere forge for machine beast warriors. Plants, with their pervasive influence, could change the land more than any weapon. With that assurance, the two dragon souls were drawn into Chen Zhou's forehead, into his inner eye, and settled in his spiritual world, descending into sleep. "Your turn," he said. After safely storing the dragon souls, Chen Zhou turned to Gu Yuena. The last rays of the setting sun stained her frost-like face with a hint of rose. She tightened her hand on the spear, and the scale patterns along it fluttered like a creature yearning for something. "I'll help you condense the dragon bone and the power within it," Chen Zhou offered. "It will make absorption much more efficient." He adjusted the alchemy matrix, linking it to the ice and fire yin-yang well at their feet. "But as the price for my help, would you play with Xuanli for a while?" Xuanli, who had been absorbed in the glowing sigils, leapt at the chance and clambered into Gu Yuena's arms. The Silver Dragon King, taken by surprise, found the warm, soft weight of the child against her cold body and stiffened. The silver dragon's spear clattered and dissolved into silver light. "Big sister is so pretty," Xuanli gushed, eyes bright. "Can Xuanli touch your hair?" Her small, dirt-smudged hand had already grabbed at the ends of Gu Yuena's silver hair. Gu Yuena's violet pupils widened. She wanted to push the child away, but her fingers moved on their own, combing through the tangled strands. The Dragon Clan's deep, instinctive protectiveness for its young waged war with her reason, and the hearth of that old instinct won out. "Just 5 minutes," she said, almost as if conceding. At that moment, one of the immortal herbs, Yu Shangqi Luo Shan Pin, began to detach in horror. Its transparent, glowing roots stretched like living things into the air, lifting the plant's main body toward Xuanli. When the little girl reached out and touched its petals, the herb burst into bloom, releasing a fragrance so rich and unprecedented that it seemed to fill the entire valley. Chapter 279, Bloodline Evolution. The octagonal mysterious ice grass's consciousness shuddered. It watched the spring water of the ice and fire yin-yang, well-being guided by some unseen force into a spiral, red and blue currents coiling around Chen Zhou like ribbons. Elemental streams that should have repelled each other instead achieved perfect harmony. Gu Yena felt Xuanli in her arms grow suddenly hot. Patterned glyphs from the alchemy matrix bloomed across the little girl's back, and her delicate fingers traced idle motions in the air. Even more astonishingly, when those emerald green patterns touched the yin-yang spring's energy, they set off a chain reaction. All the plant spirit beasts began to shrink and purify right before their eyes, compressing until they became palm-sized, glowing orbs. Life form reconstruction. Chen Zhou reached out and caught the floating Li Huo Xing Jiao Shu, fierce flame apricot arrogant van. The huge, 100,000-year immortal herb had condensed into a cluster of flickering crimson flames, cheerfully spinning in his palm. If I transplant these into the War King token, it should speed up the plane's restoration. Gu Yuena's fingertips trembled, and the silver dragon spear traced a brilliant arc through the air. She looked at Xuanli, giggling in her arms, and the usual frost in her purple eyes softened. When the little girl's warm palm touched her cheek, an almost forgotten tenderness pierced the ice of her hatred. "Sister's eyelashes are glowing," Xuanli exclaimed. As the child leaned closer, her warm breath flushed Gu Yuena's earlobes. The Silver Dragon King's instinctive reserve wanted to push the closeness away, but when Gu Yuena saw the pure emerald light in Xuanli's eyes, clear and untouched as a newborn forest, her resistance melted like spring snow. The silver dragon spear clattered to the ground, and Gu Yuena unconsciously tightened her hold, drawing the girl nearer. Chen Zhou smiled faintly and finished the last step of the alchemy sequence with a light tap. The red and blue eyes of the spring collapsed into two walnut-sized crystals that hovered above his palm, highly concentrated essence cores of the Ice Dragon King and Fire Dragon King. "All right," he turned to the silver-haired woman. "According to our agreement." "I know." Gu Yuena cut him off, stiff but not releasing the child. Xuanli contentedly braided the Silver Dragon King's hair into little bows. The small blue light cluster formed by the octagonal mysterious ice grass drifted to Chen Zhou's shoulder and emitted a shy flutter of consciousness. That adult seems different. Indeed, when Gu Yuena looked down at Xuanli, the hatred and ferocity in her gaze had thinned like mist in morning sun. The frosts that had rimed her fingertips had melted away, replaced by gentle strokes that smoothed the child's hair. Chen Zhou tossed the two crystals to Gu Yuena. "Take your reward." The moment she caught them, the entire valley trembled. With the spring's energies compacted, the surrounding rock layers lost their support and began to crumble. The plant spirit beasts, now separated from their original bodies, huddled together like a frightened swarm of fireflies. "Hurry," Chen Zhou urged. An ancient War King token hurtled from his sleeve, the beast patterns on its surface opened, their pupils lighting. The pink light cluster of the Yushang Qi Luoshan pin, faint fragrance wonderful silk immortal, was the first to be drawn in, followed by the other trembling immortal herbs and spirit beasts. Gu Yuena shielded Xuanli as stones began to fall. "You planned all this long ago?" she asked through falling dust, her purple eyes meeting Chen Zhou's. From the ice and fire yin-yang well to controlling the plane's ecosystem, Chen Zhou caught the War King token as it rebounded, and with his other hand tore open a spatial rift. His smile, unanswering, looked especially profound against the collapsing mountain. Xuanli poked her head out and pointed at the scattering spring eye ruins. "Brother, those shiny little stones." They were mineral essences the spring had accumulated for 10,000 years, now raining down like a meteor shower. Chen Zhou spotted a few special crystals and altered his gesture. An invisible field snared 7 red and blue rhomboid stones, and the alchemy matrix stripped away their impurities, refining them into perfect, finger-sized gems. A souvenir for Xuanli. He strung the crystals into a bracelet and placed it on the child's wrist. Purified by alchemy, the ice and fire mineral essences could automatically regulate temperature and carried a faint dragon aura. Xuanli shook her wrist delightedly. The red and blue gems chimed into a lovely, crystalline tune. Gu Yuena pressed her left hand to her chest. As the ice and fire energy crystals integrated into her, she felt the silver dragon bloodline shift. Dragon secrets long dormant in her genetic chain unrolled like scorched parchment, revealing deeper contents. Most troubling was the entry on the Dragon God core, the supreme inheritance supposedly sealed until the Fire Dragon King and Silver Dragon King were reunited. Don't worry about side effects. Chen Zhou seemed to read her doubts. I filtered out the residual resentment from the energy and spirit bone during refining. Those words, residual resentment, made Gu Yuena's expression dim. She knew what it implied. The Fire Dragon King and Ice Dragon King, likely slain by the Dragon God. Her fingertips trembled as an ice-blue crystal on her palm melted into her skin. The Silver Dragon bloodline and the lingering Ice Dragon energy collided violently. Fine dragon-scale patterns flared across her jade-like skin, and a golden-red halo flared in her purple eyes. Ah! Gu Yuena let out a sudden groan and sank to one knee. Xuanli scrambled forward, but Chen Zhou caught the back of her collar and held her back. The little girl kicked her legs in alarm. Sister hurts. This is part of the bloodline evolution, Chen Zhou said, pressing Xuanli back into his arms. He watched Gu Yuena's right arm as it began to dragonize. Then he took a section of Fei Gu, Fat Gu's tail feather, breaking it off with a quick motion. The owl-like creature hooted in pain as Chen Zhou flicked the metallic-sheened feather toward Gu Yuena's brow. On contact, the feather vaporized into a gray-green mist that wound around the erupting dragon mite. Fei Gu turned away in complaint, presenting its rear as the broken feather regenerated visibly. Slowly, Gu Yuena's convulsions eased. When she lifted her face, her right eye had become a golden-red vertical pupil, eerily contrasting with the violet of her left. Two streams of ice and fire energy swirled into a balanced vortex at her chest. Within it, tiny shadows of dragons swam and surfaced like ghosts. How do you feel? Chen Zhou crouched to meet her gaze. Gu Yuena clenched her fist. Tiny ice crystals and sparks of flame condensed in the air around her fingers. Very strange, she said, her voice splitting into a double echo as if two people spoke at once. I can hear fragments, memories of the Ice Dragon King and the Fire Dragon King, still trapped in the energy. Group number 30527487. First 3 chapters released. 2 more updates tonight. Chapter 280. Kill Chen Zhou. First, Xuanli seized the chance to wrench free from her bindings and dove into Gu Yuena's arms. The little girl's warm fingers curiously traced the scales at the corner of Gu Yuena's eyes. Big sisters turned into a 2-flavored ice cream. Gu Yuena reflexively wanted to push the lively child away, but found her hand patting Xuanli's back instead. Before anyone could say another word, a piercing swordlight slashed down from above with a deafening metallic clang. Fei Gu's broad wings sprang wide. Its gray-green metallic feathers sparked under the blade's light, yet the spirit-imbued sword chi still punched through its defenses, leaving a half-meter gash in its left wing. Gu-wu. The night wind carved owl instantly shifted into battle form. Its wingspan swelled to 50 meters, every feather glinting like sharpened blades. The clouds above were torn into a vortex. With each beat of its wings, thousands of wind blades fractured the air. Chen Zhou retreated with effortless grace, cradling Xuanli in one arm while pressing his other hand against Fei Gu's wound. A stream of emerald light flowed from his palm, the owl's wound sealed and scabbed over. He looked up toward the source of the sword chi, and a sly smile curved his lips. 3 minutes faster than expected. The Tang sect truly treats this place as their last chance at a comeback. Gu Yuena's silver dragon spear materialized in an instant. Her evolved right arm was sheathed in armor of interlaced ice and fire dragon scales, and golden red and ice blue energy spiraled at the spear tip. She moved to shield Xuanli behind her, her purple and gold heterochromatic pupils fixed on figures emerging through the clouds. 7 silhouettes broke through. Leading them was Cao Deji, the current Tang sect master. The lover sword in his hand had released that sword chi and still hummed with residual power. Beside him, Zhang Xin gripped another lover sword. The wine gourd tied to its tassel rattled violently in the wind. Behind them hovered Zhuo Shi, Feng Wuyu, and other Shrek powerhouses. That sword light had ripped open the sky like a wound, and the heavens dimmed. Countless fractured spatial rifts fanned out from Cao Deji, scattering distorted reflections like shards of a shattered mirror. Trespassing on Tang sect sacred ground and stealing immortal herbs, what audacity! Cao Deji's lover's sword thrummed on. When he stood beside Zhang Xin, their spirits harmonized, allowing them to unleash far greater power. The combined domains of their lover swords instantly wrapped the valley, stirring the already chaotic ether into turmoil. Feng Wu's dark purple arm erupted in black flame. Beneath his feet, the 9 spirit rings of his blazing fire dragon spirit intertwined into a ferocious dragon form. Zhuo Shi's red armored dragon spirit coalesced around him, its fiery glow illuminating the scars on his face. "Nair, Guyue, why are you doing this?" Tang Wulin's voice rang across the valley, raw, pained. Tang Wulin, whose 10th Golden Dragon King bloodline seal had just been broken through combined effort, was a nightmare of golden scales. More than half of his bloodline power had been unsealed. His body was sheathed in dazzling golden scales, and massive dragon wings erupted from his back, whipping up a hurricane. Each breath expelled searing dragon breath. His eyes, burning with golden fire, fixed on Guyuena as if to brand her image into his soul. To him, the silver-haired, purple-eyed figure below overlapped with memories of Guyue and Nair, fellow combatants, a sister he cared for, a love tangled with family affection. Guyuena's gaze remained cold and unreadable. "Tang Wulin," she said, a wry curl touching her lips. "You're still alive, huh?" Her words struck him like a hammer blow. The warmth he remembered, Guyue's gentleness, was gone. Now the girl stood at the center of a storm braided from ice and fire, looking at him as if he were a stranger, an enemy. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Why destroy Shrek? Why side with those who destroyed our home?" Guyuena's silver dragon spear flared with blinding icy light. The air she traced condensed into glittering ice crystals. Her left purple pupil narrowed, and the silver dragon king's domain swept toward the Tang sect members like an arctic tempest. "Home?" she answered, voice layered with a dragon's roar. "What a ridiculous word. When did the spirit beasts and I ever have a home? It was nothing but a cage painstakingly woven by you humans." Tang Wulin froze as if struck. Each word was a blade tearing into him. Memories of battles fought side by side on the Spirit Ascension platform, the shared walks at EC Academy, Nair's confessions at Shrek, all replayed, unspooling like a wound. "No!" he cried, golden light surging around him as more scales patched his torn clothes. "Our feelings were real. Nair's tears when she called me brother were real. Guyue sheltered me on the Ascension platform because she cared." The silver dragon spear swerved, its tip aimed straight for Tang Wulin's glabella. Guyuena's eyes flamed blood red. "Shut up," she snapped. Hatred poured out of her like lava. She no longer had patience for words. If he insisted on confronting her, then he could die. The spear condensed into a knife-thin ray and hurtled toward Tang Wulin. She had planned to wait until all the seals were broken to devour the Golden Dragon King bloodline in one fell sweep, but if he was offering himself up now, claiming nearly half of that bloodline would be more than enough. Clang! Cao Deji met Guyuena's spear light with his sword. Even with a burst of life-burning power at his back, he could not match divine-level force and was thrown backward. Zhang Xin seized the opening without hesitation. The two moved in concert, one sword shining white with a bloodline etching from hilt to tip, the other deep blue, shimmering with unfathomable depth. Cao Deji intoned loudly, "The way is ruthless, yet it has feelings." Zhang Xin returned the stare and chanted in reply, "The sentimental are destined for regret." Layers of silver descended from the sky. Intense emotional fluctuations condensed into a colossal silver cocoon that began to enclose Guyuena. "Get out!" she roared. Guyuena summoned elemental force between heaven and earth. Dragon breath, braided with ice and fire, erupted like an explosion. The silver cocoon was shredded into tatters where the dragon breath struck, but more silver layers kept falling, endless, interlocking, binding Guyuena in a spatial blockade that isolated the scene. First, kill Chen Zhou. If the Jisho Chamber of Commerce wants us dead, they won't get off easy, Cao Deji said slowly. Then unite with Lord Tang Hao and Lord Ah Yin to quickly eliminate the Jishou Chamber of Commerce. Cao Deji's voice was calm but icy. The lover Douluo was meant to be ruthless, yet his feelings, love twisted into obsession for his partner and burning hatred for Chen Zhou, had sharpened his resolve into something far more dangerous. Around them, the battlefield stilled for the briefest heartbeat before violence would break loose again.